Okay, well, we're back on the air again. It looks like for some reason, the contact request I sent to David isn't coming through, and that's why the picture isn't coming through. Technology is always very frustrating. But at this moment, why don't we just cut to the chase? And David, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself? And everyone will have seen the sort of announcement that I put on my front page, which details a bit of your background. And I believe that they would have been able to go over to your website and take a look at more about both of you. But you both have such varied backgrounds that I'd like you to introduce yourselves in a bit more detail. I can say that you're both articulate on false flags, Sandy Hook, Boston, Aurora, Colorado, and one that you say you blocked, which was Atlanta, Georgia, which I'd like to hear about, if you don't mind, when we get a chance. And then also, I know that Field McConnell is suing Boeing, if I understand it correctly, and we want to talk all about that regarding this interesting technology. And we're going to be talking about Flight 370, obviously. And you guys made some interesting statements in a recent broadcast, which is why I've contacted you. Let's see, one of you is a pilot. I'm not sure, for some reason, I didn't get all of the background information right up here. So why don't we just start off with you, David? And if you do see another request to add me as a contact, if you would do so, that will help, because I can put your picture up here. If not, then let's not worry about it.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. So my name is David Hawkins. I'm 70 years old, and I've had a career that involved mechanical engineering degree at Cambridge University. After leaving university, I joined a French oil field exploration company and traveled the world for 15 years and became familiar with some interesting things, including explosives and putting out oil fires on oil rigs around the world. And my last job with them was coordinator of artificial intelligence and geoscience research in the research center in Ridgefield, Connecticut. I started my own company in the UK, bringing artificial intelligence into the oil industry. And I arrived in British Columbia in Canada in 1992. And within, I would say, 3 weeks of arriving, I sensed I was in one of the most corrupt jurisdictions in the world, which will be staggering for a lot of Canadians that believe this country is innocent and full of peacekeepers. But it's not. And around 1995, I met some people in a company that I believe was building what in intelligence terms is called a backdoor into the command systems of Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And that company is called McDonald Detweiler. Fast forward to 2000, for a variety of reasons, I contacted the head of security of the British Royal Navy, Andy Dupour, and I asked his people to take a look at McDonald Detweiler because I sensed there was an organized group behind them that I thought represented a very strategic threat to the Canadian Royal Navy and the United States Navy. He called me back, well, he emailed me back, and he said, "Stop talking to me. We don't know who you are." And around October of 2000, the USS Cole went into Aden Harbor and was nearly blown to smithereens. And then, of course, I started to get exceedingly nervous because whilst I didn't know what was going to happen on 9/11, I could sense that the clouds were gathering for a truly devastating attack on the United States of America and or Canada and or the United Kingdom. There was nothing I could do to prevent it. But in the aftermath, as a layperson, I looked at the pictures, the television images of the way those planes were flown, and I knew from a mechanical engineering point of view there was something terribly wrong with that. I started my own radio show. I was on Coast to Coast, and I was desperately looking for someone in the United States, because I've got a British accent, and I think I recognized that no one would be very interested in what I thought in the United States. And then someone who heard me on the Coast to Coast radio show put me in contact with a gentleman by the name of Field McConnell. And I think instead of summarizing what happened after that, perhaps I could hand the introduction of who he is over to him and yourself, because then he's basically known me from, I guess, December the 6th, 2006. And he and I have fought together and swum together and argued together for ever since.
Okay, excellent. So I'm actually trying to bring your website up here while we're sort of online here, because I think that would be helpful to people. So just one moment here. For some reason, it was going somewhere else. Great, it's not actually working. Is this your website that says Philbin?
Our website is abeldanger.net.
Okay. That's really,
okay.
okay.
As in Cain and Abel, A-B-E-L.
Yes, got that. And now you've explained. So does it have Blogspot in the name?
No.
Either one of us would know.
It's just www.abeldanger.net.
Okay, very good. So, and that's useful to people. Right now, I'm bringing your website up. I'm actually going to look and see if there's a better picture. Yeah, there is, of you here on the front page, which is excellent. Because mine on my banner is a bit small. So you've been listening to David Hawkins. We're now going to be talking to Field McConnell. And Field, are you there? And he will be live on video. So I'm going to sort of shift things around here so that can happen. So can you pick up the story?
Sure. I'll pick it up where he left it off on the 6th of December of 2006.
Okay.
And I will pick that up and go forward after I bring you up to date on the intervening period between October 2nd of 1949 and December 6th of 2006. I was born into a United States Air Force family. My father had been a World War II bomber pilot. He was a POW. He was nursed back to health by my mother. He claims that in a moment of weakness in the hospital, he accepted her marriage proposal. They were married 62 years. She was an Army nurse. They're both at Arlington National Cemetery. They have 2 children, myself and my sister. If you want to picture a gunfight at the OK Corral, you can picture me as the guy with the white hat, my sister with the black hat, and she can explain herself. Perhaps maybe you'd like to interview her sometime. She's probably the most powerful person in America that nobody ever heard of until David Hawkins found her out. But enough about my sister. I was educated in the public school system until grade 12 when I went to, you might think of him as Barack Obama, but when he was at Punahou School, Barry Spataro was 12 years behind me. I graduated from Punahou School in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1967. I then spent 4 years at the United States Naval Academy of Annapolis, where I graduated in 71. I then spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, where I was an aviator. And then I got offered a very nice job with the North Dakota Air National Guard, flying F-4 and F-16 interceptors. Shortly after I took my job with the North Dakota Air National Guard, I began a 31-year airline career, 29 at Northwest, where I had no hiccups or flaws, until on the 6th of December when I met David over a phone call. And we communicated so effectively between the two of us that by the 10th of December of 2006, I alerted the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, the FAA, and most importantly, the Airline Pilots Association, which is a union which ostensibly exists to enhance the safety of the traveling public, which they've been an abject failure, and I'd say a felonious abject failure. I'll fill you in on that later. Shortly after David and I announced to the world that the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot existed, the United States Department of Justice told my then employer, Northwest Airlines, that they needed to shut me up. And unfortunately for the Department of Justice and Boeing, not Boeing, and the Airline Pilots Association, And now Serco, which is the most powerful and evil corporation most people have never heard of, SERCO. In the old days, they called it the octopus. David and I raised an issue that was so hot that they being the Department of Justice and the cabal that operates them, they wanted me to shut up. As you can clearly see, Carrie, I'm not a very quiet person. When they played hardball and tried to get me to be quiet, I just retired in a 10-minute decision. And I retired 8 years early, and that brings us around to what I did next. I got a phone call unsolicited from the Human Resource Department of Air Astana, Astana, a young lady. In fact, her picture was in one of the last 2 chapters. For those Abel Danger followers here at Carrie Cassidy's Project Camelot today, you may recall seeing a young woman sitting on the lap of what appears to be an Arab. Well, I was the Arab, and I'm not an Arab, but I had the Arab traditional dress on. And the lady sitting on my lap was actually the human resource lady, a Polish national who worked in Dublin, Ireland. And when my phone rang in December of 2007, she said, "Are you Field McConnell?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you retired?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you really retired?" And I said, "I really am retired." And she says, "Would you like to go to Kazakhstan and fly Airbuses?" I was at a little bit of an academic disadvantage since I'd never heard of Kazakhstan. But after seeing someone point a finger on a globe, I said, yes, it's always been my dream to go to Kazakhstan and fly Airbuses. The reason I say that, Carrie, is when I had filed the paperwork regarding the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, by virtue of being offered a job to go to a Muslim nation and fly non-Boeing airliners, in this case the Airbus A320 family of airliners, I knew that some power greater than David, Carrie, and myself was active and was creating a real history for me to go and play out. And so I went to Kazakhstan and I flew for 18 months. And while in Kazakhstan, there were 2 more, I would say, attempts to get me to be quiet. One was on the 13th of December of 2008, and if this sounds ludicrous, I will send you the paperwork, Carrie. But on the 13th of December of 2008, I was operating an Airbus at Aterau, Ateryau, destined for Astana, Kazakhstan, and the airplane was needlessly out of balance when they loaded it. They had the CG so far aft that the aircraft, which should have taken off with about 140 knots, became airborne slower than 100, which means we're going to die real soon if something isn't done. So I did something real quick, not because of my airline background, but because of my fighter pilot background. And I'm not being boastful and I'm not reliving my youth, but it appears that somebody wanted that airplane to crash, and once again, they didn't get it done. Later, in July of 2009, after I'd been over there 18 months, over there in Kazakhstan, flying with Muslim co-pilots around tall buildings in non-Boeing airliners, I had a check ride in Amsterdam, and I failed the check ride, which I didn't care because I wasn't over there for my ego or money. I was over there to be of service. The guy who failed me on the check ride, I think he probably was asked to fail me because the on-off switch for most pilots is money, captain's hat. They really love wearing their captain hat. See, this is what I look like if I put a captain hat on, which I could do if I could find one. I was never motivated by money nor dressing up like something I'm not. So when I flunked the check ride, I didn't care. I'd go back to the States and life would go on. But they decided, well, maybe you should go try it again. I said, well, you're paying it. So if you want me to go try it again, I'll be happy to. So I went and I took a check ride a second time and I passed the check ride. And then Air Astana, the company, goofed up the paperwork. And I think that was intentional. I don't know and I don't care. So when the chief pilot of Air Astana asked me to try to focus on Airbus policies and not Northwest Airlines policies regarding the Airbus, I said, I absolutely won't do that. I said, every fatal Airbus accident in the history of the world has been with an airline using Airbus procedures. I said, the airline, this is dated information, August 2nd. No, let's make that August 4th of 2009. I looked directly across the table at the chief pilot, who was a Boeing pilot, not an Airbus pilot. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, Northwest procedures have been used in the biggest Airbus fleet in the world. They've never had a fatality. And you're asking me to downgrade my thinking to a lesser formula for flying that's resulted in all the fatalities in the Airbus world? I said, I won't do it. He says, you mean you won't do it our way? And I said, yes. For the third time, I will not do it your way. He says, well, then you can't stay here. I said, great, perform your contractual obligation. Give me a first-class ticket through through Frankfurt, Chicago, and on to Fargo, and I'll go home Thursday because my contract is up 2 days from now. So that's basically, that's my history from the time I was born, through the Naval Academy, through the Marine Corps, through the Air National Guard, through Northwest Airlines, through Astana Airlines in Kazakhstan, and now for the last 7.5 years, since December 6th of 2006, David and I have been on the phone every single day. We've been on the radio on live stream 3 days a week for the last couple of years. Previously, we were at some other alternative radios that may or may not be disinformation sites. We don't care. The information is the same. And the information we have is very hot right now in Malaysia and China. And I think I sent you a copy of the letter, Carrie, but just today I encouraged aviation-minded people or the victims of the alleged victims, the survivors of the alleged victims of MH370, to just do a Google search that should really end this issue once and for all. That Google search is quite simple. It's MH370 plus BUAP, that's short for Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, and my surname, McConnell. And those three search terms should end the false flag history of hull loss, HULLLOSS. And my final words before I turn it over to you, Carrie, are MH370 was the fifth hull loss using the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, and the other four were Atom Air 574, Kenya Airways 507, Air France 447, Sukhoi Superjet demonstration in May of 2012, and to this date, no one in the United States has been responsible in responding to my charges, whereas Russia and the GRU responded within 48 hours. So we've given up on the United States of America trying to end this charade, and we're going outside the continental U.S. with our information. Carrie, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you both for very interesting introductions, I must say, and bringing up some things that I would like to drill down into further. I do want you to explain this technology that you're referring to in more detail, because it is not clear to me, I don't know if it's clear to the listeners, how this non-interruptible technology on the Boeing, on planes that is made by Boeing, would have either averted this incident or the other disappearances of these other planes that you're saying, if I understand you correctly, you're saying at least 4 or maybe even 5 other airliners have disappeared in a similar way, if I understood you. Now, if you can clarify that, I would hope you can, and talk about the technology, how it operates, why it would interfere with somebody's, either why it's responsible for the takedown, or why it would, if it was operational, it would stop a takedown. And I have read the background on this, but I have to be honest with you, it is not completely clear to me. That may be because I bring in other factors, and I want to bring those up as well. But if you could at least start off on that question. And David Hawkins, you're welcome to add whatever you think is helpful here.
Okay. Field, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. What I was going to do, and I'll make my response quite brief. We've been publishing this for 7.5 years, and I would say that anyone who really historically has had an interest would have already read the article that was printed on the 3rd of March of 2007. But the history on this Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot is Boeing has had droned aircraft, as far as I know, and I don't know everything, going back to 1943. They've had droned swept-wing multi-jet engine airplanes going back to 1953, when Boeing had an MB, Mike Bravo, 47, MB-47, which was basically a drone. There were no human pilots in it. They enhanced that to a QB-47, and in our chat room, which is different than your chat room, I'm sure somebody will probably put up the YouTube of a QB-47 taking off in 1961. But Boeing, even though they didn't admit it readily, they have had dronable jet transport category aircraft for a long, long time. What finally caused them to honestly and responsibly admit they had this was when I filed a lawsuit, and that's civil case 3:07-CB Charlie Victor -24. That was my name, McConnell versus Alpha and Boeing. I filed that on the 27th of February of 2007. 4 days later, on the 3rd of March of 2007, in the London newspaper, Boeing published that they indeed had recently patented, they said recently, specifically they said last week, they said that they had published, or they had patented a week earlier, the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. Then they went on to dig a deeper hole for themselves by saying, and had that autopilot been deployed on 9/11, 9/11 would have been impossible. There's a little bit of a problem there because the autopilots were deployed in 1995. And 1995, according to my non-spectacular math degree, is 6 years before 2011. So what I'm telling you, Kerry, is this Boeing uninterruptible autopilot was in fact used on 9/11. It was used again on those 5 airliners. And I'm going to make this, and I'm not talking down to you or any of your listeners. I'm just trying to take a very complex system and make it crystal clear to a 10th grader in America in a public school with a C- average. I'm holding up in front of the camera a pepper shaker, but let's turn this pepper shaker into an airplane. The airplane is typically guided by 2 or 3 humans up in the cockpit, but as a backup to create rest and relaxation for the pilots, and also to increase or enhance the accuracy of the aviation being performed, the autopilot of any aircraft is generally engaged from sometime during the climb to just before landing. With the advent of the glass cockpit airliners, which means you go from round dials, like on a 1966 Volkswagen, you had a round speedometer, and then 25 years later, you have digital LED things. Same with the airplanes. They go from round dials to flight guidance, and Boeing calls it FMS, Flight Management System. Airbus calls it FMGC, Flight Management. I don't know what the G stands for anymore. Somebody could Google it. Control. However, having said this, once they put in the Flight Management System or the FMGC, the entire flight from the gate, and I think you're in California, Kerry, so I'm going to pick someplace in California randomly. I'm going to pick gate 45 at San Francisco, and you put in the coordinates for gate 45 at San Francisco. You tell the box you're going to be taking off on runway 28 left. You tell the box you want to do a certain departure, which is called a SID, Standard Instrument Departure. Then you want that Standard Instrument Departure to join either airways if you're going across the United States, or waypoints if you're going across the Pacific Ocean. Just to have more fun with this, we'll go across the ocean. So there's 5 tracks between San Francisco and Hawaii, and you would go from the SID, Standard Instrument Departure, out to the first waypoint on the track that heads to Hawaii, and then you put each subsequent waypoint in your, we call those things something I'm glad I didn't say, because it's not implied, it's just a proper word that can be used wrong. But you put all these waypoints into the automation. Then at the end of the track, you tell the automation that you want to go from the end of the track to a certain arrival, like the Molokai 3 arrival to Honolulu, and you want to land on Honolulu's runway 26 right. Okay, that's all in the box now, and you've got the automation in there, and the idea is that when you turn the autopilot on, it will pick up wherever it is on this, from gate to gate. You've loaded the entire flight plan. It will follow the flight plan all the way over to the Molokai 3 departure, and it'll get onto a final approach on runway 26 right. and then the humans will take over once the airplane safely stops at the end of the run or towards the end of the runway. The way now, I think I haven't lost any C- students in a public school yet. So the airplane now, we're going to go back, we're going to take off again, we're going to fly out to the first waypoint on the track. And at this point, whereas the pilots have told the autopilot to fly down the track, if it's equipped with a Boeing that's an improper word, by the way, a Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, and every Boeing is, by Boeing's own words, on the 3rd of March of 2007, where they said within 3 years, every airliner in the world will be thusly equipped. Therefore, they've made their statement and they haven't changed it. Okay, we got a pair of pilots. We have a 53-year-old captain, a 27-year-old co-pilot, and they're going to Honolulu to have fun. Well, if they have a Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, and I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. One's going to be 3 armed Arab hijackers, since we're supposed to vilify a non-existent enemy. Okay, these 3 armed Arab hijackers come to the cockpit door. They brush aside the flight attendants, male and female, and they pound on the door to get in, and nobody's let them in the door. And so then they're going to run back and they're going to ram it with their shoulder, which will trigger sufficient force that the door itself would turn on the uninterruptible autopilot in anticipation of humans getting in the cockpit. Or another scenario is the captain or the 27-year-old co-pilot decides they're going to leave the flight plan and they're going to go buzz Alcatraz. Well, they wouldn't be too far off the flight plan before the technology would detect they're deviating from the plan, in which place a benign or positive agency, such as their airliner, let's call it Ajax Airliner. The Ajax SOC, Systems Operations Center, will say, well, we don't know what these guys are doing, but they just left the track. So in the SOC of Ajax Airliner, they would push a button to engage the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. Then they would push a button that might be something like rejoin flight plan, in which case the airplane would be taken away from the humans that want to go to Alcatraz, and it'll be put back on the track to go to Honolulu. Or if it was much closer, which it would be in terms of flying time, and don't ever get confused with distance and flying time. Distance means Jack Italy. It's always the closest suitable airport in flying time. In other words, if you're flying into a 200-mile wind, you may want to turn around and go back to the closest airport that's safe for that type of an aircraft. Anyway, the point is here, and I think high school kids could have hung with me, the autopilot can be used for a good use. That is, the pilots are unreliable. They want to go to Alcatraz. And so the company or the FAA or AWACS or Navy Poseidon or Air Force Night Watch, any of those agencies, if they're granted authority, and I believe they are, and it's for them to announce that they're not, if they hear the sound of my voice, which they have in writing for years, they're going to take the airplane and fly it safely to Honolulu or back to San Francisco. But the same feature, if it falls into the hands of, and there's no word other than evil, because when you allegedly, I'm saying allegedly, send 239 people to their death with malice aforethought, as we're being told in the phony baloney shaggy dog story of MH370, that 239 people were killed just for a couple of patents or a little bit of gold. Well, that's evil. That's not criminal. That's not corrupt. It's not conspiratorial. It's not tin hat. It is evil. And so, Carrie, that's what we do. We get our heads around the technologies which make it possible for some third party to commit evil acts, kill people, make money, and point the finger at somebody else. And it doesn't matter who they point the finger at. We make sure that their finger gets pointed right back at them. And for lack of a more central player, I would say that right now today, if I was in front of a judge and a jury of my peers in a courtroom that did not have a gold fringe flag, I would say to the best of my ability, of the 4 potential entities that could have taken over MH30, those being China, Russia, the United States, or Serco, I would bet my life, in fact, I probably am by saying this with camera running, I'm betting my life right now willingly that Serco's behind MH370. Carrie, over to you.
Okay, well, that does clarify things a bit. So your premise is that, in fact, all this autopilot exists, and it's part of every airplane out there, and therefore Flight 370 certainly had it on board, and that therefore someone took control over that and then flew the plane wherever they wanted to. Is it also your premise that they disabled, I believe it's called the transponders, and also disappeared the plane so that it couldn't be seen on radar of any kind and that sort of thing?
I'll answer that one, David. These are not premises. These are direct quotes from published reports from Boeing aircraft as it pertains to Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. As it pertains to MH370, once again, these are not premises. The CEO of Malaysia Airlines, in direct response to a question from a media entity who asked the CEO, did MH370 have the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot? His mealy-mouthed, vague, and otherwise, I would say, dishonest, or attempt to be dishonest, answer was the aircraft were standard. In other words, he's saying the aircraft are completely standard the way they come out of the factory with no upgrades. Well, by Boeing's own words, as of 2010, the Boeing uninterruptible pilot is standard. So there's no premise about this. We've documented all this stuff 10 times over. As far as the vanishing goes, that can be accomplished a number of ways. An aircraft like Night Watch, which is an E4B, or AWACS, which is an E3A. I don't know about Poseidon, which is the Navy aircraft. It's called a something or other, P8 Poseidon. They have the ability to vanish radar returns electronically. Also keep in mind that according to the media, 20 of the passengers were software engineers working for Freescale in Austin, Texas. 12 of them were Chinese, I think, and 8 Malaysians. But there's 20 people who had just done the work, the software work, to create a super chip that can be used to make otherwise unstealthy aircraft very stealthy up to the point of vanishing them from radars. But let's get real simple for a C-minus kid in high school, probably at the first semester of the sophomore year. If you want to vanish an aircraft from radar, get down and fly right on the surface of the ocean, like say 20 feet, 30 feet above the ocean. No conventional radars are going to see you because of the curvature of the Earth. Radars that are monitoring you from space would see you, but who has those? Does the air traffic control system have them? Not to my knowledge, the military does. And I also don't think this aircraft really ever vanished, not to correct you, Carrie, because you're singing the same tune that the mainstream media is, and that's not a criticism, that's an observation. The aircraft never really vanished completely because both of the Rolls-Royce Trent engines were pinging, which means sending downloaded packets of information every 30 minutes. That's how we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the aircraft did not perish or cease to exist on its northerly track to Beijing before it made a left turn and headed west.
Right, and that was for, if I remember correctly, 6 hours after its initial sort of closing down of communications, right?
Yes, you remember correctly. It was 6 hours. And your question about the transponder, the humans could have turned the transponder off.
Certainly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
Yeah, but I didn't finish completely.
Sorry.
The humans turn it off, or the people that turned on the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot have electronic control of everything, and they could have turned it off. And if you want to go another step, if the Russian, Chinese, or Americans had remotely snatched this aircraft, they could turn it off. So the aircraft never really vanished. It just vanished from the mainstream media and the people in Malaysia and China that are very, very upset, and justifiably so.
Okay, fair enough. And have you researched the let's see, Freescale semiconductor beyond what you said, which I've actually done a previous show with Mike Harris, who is somebody who worked for Motorola that owned Freescale, and he actually tried to buy that division before it was bought up by Rothschild. Have you gone into the background on Freescale as well, beyond the stealth technology?
Our organization has, and if you're asking me, no, I haven't, because we don't duplicate efforts. But the question to you is, have we lost David?
Well, just before we have a slight delay on my end because the technology is a bit slow because we're broadcasting. And yes, he appears to have dropped off. So what I want to do is try to redial him. Usually the system redials him automatically, but unless he actually hung up. So I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yeah, he could not have hung up. So he drops off sometimes when we're in three-way conversation. So you can try to get him back if you want, or if one of our listeners from Abel Danger, like Joy,
okay,
she could send David over to do our other interview at Sovereign Independent in the UK due to the time zone change where we have daylight savings time and they don't. I got overcommitted for a common hour here. But if you want to go get David back, you can ask me a question and I'll answer it while you dial him. Or if you want to let him go, it may be possible for him to get on the Sovereign Independent in the UK. Your choice, Gary.
Oh, yes, we would like to get him back, but it looks like we're having problems doing that. So if you want to hold on 1 minute, I'm going to put the other picture here on the screen while I try to find David on my Skype here and figure out why he dropped off this conversation. Hold on 1 second here.
Also, I can get David if you want to handle the picture. I can get David.
Oh, all right. If you're able to do that, that's fine.
Okay, I'm doing it right now.
Okay, that might work better.
Well, it makes it easier on you because you have to do one thing instead of two. And David's phone is ringing. We'll see if he picks it up. In fact, we frequently multitask, so
right.
Perhaps someone,
so do I.
Yeah, and I think someone in the Abel Danger chat room probably will send him a chat comment to please call either you or me.
Okay, I see he's coming up here. So, David, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. You dropped off, and so thank you very much for rejoining us. We're not sure why you dropped off or how it happened. Any ideas on your end?
No, shall I just comment, because I missed something that presumably that Phil spoke about while I was missing. I'd like to make a contribution that fits in that Go ahead.
Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, because what I last heard him saying, talking about the use of the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot to take over a plane, this connects directly with this company, McDonnell and Associates, because in conjunction with the development of the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot and its various patent pool devices, which includes a missile gyroscope that we've covered elsewhere, the software to do the hijacking was developed by McDonnell and Associates in Richmond in British Columbia. And on May the 3rd, they announced through a press release that they had won a contract from the United States Air Force for 108 Air Force bases around the world that would allow the technician.
Kerry, he just dropped off again, and so I think we're going to continue to lose him. It's his frailty, not physically, but his infrastructure. But I can pick up where he left off. He's talking about 108 Air Force bases around the world that were configured to accept remotely guided Boeing aircraft. Ostensibly, the good reason or the excuse for deploying this technology that was shared with we the people was, well, in case somebody tries to hijack your airliner, you'll be much safer because the Boeing uninterruptible technology will regain control. Your technology is trying to call him now, I see. Hopefully it'll work. But the feature would allow the aircraft to be safely guided to any of 108 airports around the world that were set up to receive these flights. And so it's a very good plan. Unfortunately, the good plan was created by some people who got infiltrated, or perhaps there were bad members all along. But the technology, the core technology behind the attacks of 9/11, which is the same exact technology that just took MH370, and this is not something anybody in their right mind would boast about, but I gave that technology to my sister, Christine Marcy. I did it in December of 1988 when she was the director of the U.S. Marshal Service, and she wanted to know how to prevent prisoners from overwhelming the flight crew on U.S. Marshal operated flights from Honolulu to the West Coast. So I told her, you drone the aircraft. She and another household name, and I won't mention the household name because I've mentioned it for years and I'm being redundant, but she and another name, somebody who might be running for president in 2016, who was once a intellectual property or patent lawyer at Rose Law in Arkansas, ripped off a piece of hardware from BEI Corporation, also of Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, and that piece of hardware is called the Q as in Queen, QRS-11 gyro chip. These are chips that are put into the guidance system of Maverick missiles and other supersonic missiles built by Raytheon Corporation. Unfortunately, they were also put into the Stranglers suite. I'll spell that, STRANGLER', Stranglers suite, SUITE. And that's 6 illegal modifications to airliners that have been out there since before 2001. And what makes them illegal is simply this. I mean, the issues are so complex, you got to find somebody to water it down and make it simple. Here it comes. They're illegal because the pilots operating the aircraft are not aware of the Strangler suite. They're not aware of the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. So therefore, they cannot possibly discharge their obligations under FAR, Federal Aviation Regulation 121.533. Carrie, over to you.
Okay. If they're not aware of it, but you're aware of it, how is that possible? In other words, are you saying that they are kept, this information is kept from them, even though they have the capability of, as I read the document said, they could flip a switch, in essence, to activate this uninterruptible technology? If they're not aware of it, they certainly aren't going to flip the switch. However, they are going to probably know there's a switch there that they don't know what it does. I mean, no? Can you?
No, you're making it more difficult than it needs to be. And just for the sake of your listeners, the absolute felonious act is not only have the unions of the airlines around the globe not shared this information with their pilots, but in the case of ALPA, Airline Pilots Association here in the United States of America, and IFALPA, which is International Airline Pilots Association, both of those entities have suppressed the information from the pilots, and I know that for certain without a shadow of a doubt, Carrie, because I'm the individual who sent the information directly to 4 Alpha presidents, those names being Randy Babbitt, Dwayne Worth, John Prater, and current President Lee Moak. I'm also the individual who sent the information in 2006 to then president of IFALPA, whose last name was Limon, which is Spanish for lemon, Limon. I'm also the individual that shared it even within the last 72 hours. And you saw an email today from me, Carrie, that went to David Tochen, Tochen at NTSB, and to Michael Huerta, Huerta, at FAA.gov, and also to Lee Moak at ALPA. Everything I do is public. Everything we do is accurate. and the truth is going to come out. And as much as some crybabies in the United States of America want to suppress this because of the probably hundreds of billions of potential not lawsuits, but dollars of settlement claims, what's the value of a human life? To these people, I'm not meaning the Alpha presidents or the Alpha attorneys, talking about the cabal behind them that they are inadvertently protecting. They don't care about money, and they certainly don't care about human lives. And if they have to choose one over the other, well, they've been choosing money every step of the way. A good example, and I'm not putting pressure on you, and I will not ask you a question you cannot answer because that's not fair, but you're aware that the mainstream media thinks that the flight that hit the Pentagon in the morning of 9/11 was American 77. You're aware of that, aren't you, Carrie?
Yes.
Were you aware that the guy flying that airplane was my college classmate?
No.
See, that's when I say there's a power much greater than humans at work here. The man's name was Chick, C-H-I-C. That's not a reference to a young lady. That's a reference to a nickname his family gave him for whatever reason, but maybe he didn't want to be known as Francis Charles Burlingame, so everybody shortened it to Chip. He was the captain of American 77. His aircraft did not hit the Pentagon. His aircraft was taken to Whiskey 386 Alpha airspace and destroyed 45 minutes prior to whatever struck the Pentagon, which we believe we know what it was. Let me just take a breath here and tell you that you move faster than some other radio hosts, because yesterday, before you contacted me, you may know the name Joyce Riley from the Power Hour. Mm-hmm. She contacted me, so I committed to you and Neil first, and then I told her, I'm committed to you and Neil, but I'd be more than happy to appear on her radio show. It's interesting to note that her former husband was a guy named David Von Kleist, and you may not have heard that, but he did a wonderful videotape, about an hour and a half, about 9/11. It was called Plane Site. And the only problem was, because he was not an aviation professional, he missed out on a key thing that he published. And I'll tell you exactly what it was. And it caused him to become irate with me, which is good. I don't mind it if people are irate with me. I have a job to do, and I do it. What he didn't see in his own production was in the background audio of one of the scenes that he produced. There is a female air traffic controller at Washington arrival radar saying, "We saw that track coming, and we all thought it was a military flight because the real American 77 had vanished over the Atlantic Ocean 45 minutes earlier." He published that, and he didn't even understand what he published. So when I went out on a radio show such as yours, it was not yours, but somebody asked me a question. I said, well, according to David Von Kleist, American 77 perished 45 minutes before the flying object struck the Pentagon, which the lady air traffic controller claimed everyone in the room thought it was a military flying vehicle because of the speed and the maneuver it performed. And it was, in fact, a flying vehicle. It was a Raytheon-owned, retired or surplus Navy Alpha 3, A3 Sky Warrior, and several Raytheon Sky Warriors had been super modified at Fort Collins Loveland Airport in Colorado, and it appears, and this is recent information as of this week, it appears that there is a modification center in Waco, Texas, that could also have been modifying Raytheon A3s. And if anyone's serious about the aviation events of the morning of 9/11, they cannot do better than to study Raytheon. 5 of their senior people got zapped on 3 of the 9/11 flights. And the reason they got zapped is because they knew the technology they had just finished perfecting. And so their own technology killed them to keep them quiet.
Okay. Is this drone technology that you're referring to?
Yes, it is drone technology.
Okay. That actually, you may not know this. I don't know how familiar you are with Project Camelot, but we have a witness, what we call a whistleblower. His name originally was Henry Deacon. He did not come out under his own name, but he worked for individuals, and he even has said so. that were involved in the modification of those planes. His name is Arthur Neumann, and he reported that to us many years ago, which we reported on our website. And your information actually substantiates what he said.
Okay, I'll give you another name, and I'm not suggesting you Google this because I can see you're 29 years old, and once you hit 28 or 29, the multitasking skills diminish. But the man's name is Darryl, D-A-R-R-Y-L, Skurich, S-K-U-R-I-C-H, and Darryl Skurich is an expert aircraft modifier in the Denver, Colorado area. He formerly had a relationship with the CIA. I'm not pointing the finger at Darryl Skurich as in he did something he shouldn't have done, because when these A3 Sky Warriors were being super modified, all of the technicians were compartmentalized, and they were instructed not to talk to each other. So the people that might come in and work for 8 hours on navigational equipment, they're working alone. They're not talking to the next shift that's going to come in and work on engines, or the third shift that's going to come in and work on metalsmith type things, strengthening the fuselage and wings. They're not going to be talking to the weapons guys who come in on the fourth shift, which is the first shift tomorrow. Everybody's compartmentalized. Everybody's told they're working on a very important defense project that will save America's bad guys, when actually the complete opposite was the truth. They were working on the weapons that were going to finish off America, and the two Sky Warriors that were modified that I'm aware of, there may have been more. Let me, just in the interest of being real specific, if anyone out there wants to go to FAA.gov, on the homepage of the FAA, there's a box that starts with an M, capital N. Then you fill in the letters, and I'll give you the letters to fill in. This is where your listeners can really feel like they're part of the process. If they go to FAA.gov, look at the box on the opening page where it says N hyphen, put in 874RS, 874 Romeo Sierra. There's one of the Raytheon Sky Warriors, and off the top of my head, I think it's the one they no longer have registered. And why would anybody want to pay the registration on an airplane that may have flown into the Pentagon? Carrie, over to you.
Okay, this is not the topic that we were going to be covering here, but it is related, certainly. And I can say, and it would be very interesting if Henry Deacon is actually in hiding, more or less, at this moment, although he has appeared in public talking about other subjects. This particular, his role in 9/11 was not on American soil, although the organization he worked for had Americans sort of heading it up, I guess you might say, but it was more of an international organization that was also involved in this these modifications that you're talking about and making this all possible. Obviously, he had a huge crisis of conscience. They knew in advance. They were actually told by the people that he works for that they would hear an announcement before it happened. They did. I don't think they detailed what the announcement would be, but they obviously knew full well what it would be, and they warned people not to get upset and to understand that this was all for a positive purpose in the end, something of that nature. But he works in black projects, meaning above top secret, or did.
Yeah, we have several people that are Abel Danger volunteers, because I think that Abel Danger, which doesn't exist, by the way, I think that there's people out there in the intelligence world that are, there's some very senior people, meaning people that are put in places to obstruct justice. The very senior people in these intelligence agencies internationally are very frustrated by Abel Danger because they can't figure out where we get our information. And yet the vast majority of the people, and I'm going to pick the first three that come to mind. Okay, here they are. The FBI, the CIA, and the FAA. The vast majority of the people working at those agencies love what Abel Danger does, because we do what they can't do. And when I say they can't do it, the FBI has locked up and killed numerous FBI agents who don't want to drink the Kool-Aid and sing Kumbaya. So the people, as you noticed, I mean, don't agree with me to make me look right, or to make you look like you're a good listener, but didn't I send you an email this morning that had the FAA, the NTSB, and other government agencies on the email? I'm quite certain I did.
Yes, you've been actually sending me more than one of that nature, but yes.
Yeah, well, that's because I have, I'm pretty active putting the information out there, but I put it out in a way. I send it to both good people, bad people, and people who I don't know if they're good or bad. I don't care what team people are on. The truth is the truth. And if they're good people, the truth encourages them. And if they're bad people, the information puts them on notice that they're not suppressing the information. They're not going to scare anybody. I'm 64 years old. How do you scare somebody that's had a fairly pleasant life, has 5 kids and 3 grandkids, and I would gladly trade my future life from 64 to X to stop the violation of one 4-year-old boy or girl anywhere in the world where life is not valued. And the thrust behind all of these evil crimes that are false flags, the glue that holds them all together is organized pedophilia. And that's another direction you didn't want to go. But if you dig enough, you're going to find organized pedophilia. And one of the organizations is SOS-CV, Children's Villages. And if you want later on, or if somebody in my chat room has your email address, they may send you a picture of my sister, Christine Marcy, standing in front of an SOS Children's Village in Mali, M-A-L-I, West Africa. So we're putting the people at the very top of the evil cabal on notice that they're neither fooling us nor are they scaring us. But because they will not allow the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the FAA to make aviation safer, we'll just go right around and we'll do it from outside the nation in. And a perfect example, and if you remind me, because I stay busy 18 hours a day, but I sent a letter to the Russians immediately after their Sukhoi Superjet was taken down in Indonesia in May of 2012, and within 48 hours, Carrie, GRU, which is the new name for KGB, GRU published and I'm not saying my like this is public information. It's just that we understand it, and so when we package it and send it to people, we are, in fact, it's not we in this case, I am the individual who sent it to Vladimir Putin through 2 back doors, one being the GRU and one being his military Air Force attaché in Washington, D.C., whose office is on Tunlaw Road Northwest. Carry over to you.
Okay, well, I certainly don't mind going into the whole pedophilia aspect. I've interviewed a number of people in that area who have been researching what's been going on with the sort of cabal and the Illuminati, what we call the Illuminati, and their sort of proclivity in that direction. But what I do want to talk about before we go down that road at all is the disappearance of the various airlines, one of which you're referring to now, and how this technology is in the hands of what I would call the secret space program and the secret government. It's being used, and I'm wondering if you understand that that's what they're doing. They're disappearing or taking these airlines off course. They're flying them somewhere else, whether it's Diego, Diego, what's it called? Garcia, yes, that or to an underground base at Pine Gap, or whether they're taking it somewhere else to another base that I might not know the name of. In other words, they're doing it with you've got at least 5 airlines that they've done this to, right?
Yes, and I'll say those quite slowly. Adam Air 574 on the 1st of January of 2007. Kenya Airways 507 on the 5th of May of 2007. Air France 447 on the 1st of June, and I believe that was 2009. Sukhoi Superjet demonstration jet in May, and I think it was probably May 11th or 12th of 2012, and MH370 on the 8th of March of this current year, 2014. And the reason these people are going to get caught is because they're going back to the same playbook over and over. They're using the same technologies And what the end game is they're trying to scare us into relying on more security by the governments, which means that we're in greater control, and we're in a police state such as Rutherford Organization or the Rutherford Institute out in Virginia has been warning us for years. But I don't think we need to be afraid of them. In fact, I know this will sound rather arrogant to you, Carrie, and it would to anybody who's a first-time listener, but we have the cabal afraid of us, and it's really not us. As I told you, Abel Danger doesn't exist. We're a bunch of compassionate, fearless, informed, and tenacious people globally who will not kneel to tyranny. We will not allow traitors to prosper. And we would rather, speaking for David Hawkins and myself, we would both rather be dead than be quiet. And it's as simple as that, Carrie.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I'm in the same boat with you in that regard. So these airliners are being disappeared, taken off course for a purpose. Now, I don't know whether all of those were commercial airlines and whether they had on board what this airliner had, which was around 239 people. But what I'm curious is I assume those airlines have never been found, and I'm assuming that if they did have full loads of people, all those people have then been disappeared. Is that correct?
It's both correct and partially correct. We need to add to those 5 flights, the 4 flights of 9/11. In the case of the 4 flights of 9/11, all the passengers, all the crew, and all the hijackers are dead. They're gone. In the case of Adam Air, they did find some wreckage. That was in the Indonesian Straits or some portion of water down around Indonesia. It was flying from a very Muslim portion of Indonesia to a very Christian portion of Indonesia. Once again, they're sort of copycatting 9/11. They're trying to raise the Muslim card, which MH370 also, the mainstream media is just, they're loving the fact that the captain was a Muslim. Well, I used to fly with Muslims in Kazakhstan, and nobody tried to kill me. And had they tried, they would have failed. Let's go back to the next one. Kenya Airways, that was flying from Cameroon to Kenya. It went down in a swamp, but then, and this is part of the pattern, the official recovery and rescue effort was taken 90 degrees and about 200 miles off course by false reports. And what they're gaining by either putting these flying objects in deep portions of the ocean, as they've allegedly done with 370, which I think is hogwash, but they're claiming that it's out in a very deep portion of the ocean west of Australia. Right now, I don't know if you picked up on this, but there's a tropical cyclone buried down on that same area. It's Tropical Storm Gillen. Had you seen that, Carrie?
Yes, I just saw that briefly, one-line report earlier this morning.
Yeah, and see, the patterns of all these flights bear similarities, and they should, because it's the same cabal doing them all. Air France 447 is, I think, the best example, because it went down on a route from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to Paris, France, and it went down over the deepest part. I'm not making this up. I mean, everyone knows the deepest part of the route from those two cities. It went down right in the deepest part of the ocean. Why would they want to put it in the deepest part? To delay the recovery of the black boxes and to give them time to put other black boxes in there that are preloaded with the story they want to come out. We were very aggressive in Air France 447, Carrie, because Senator Dorgan, who is a guy from North Dakota who was sold out to the Rockefeller money, if he wants to sue me, it's a little bit late. But anyway, Senator Byron Dorgan knew the truth of all this. And how do I know he knew? Well, because I reported it to him face-to-face in the airport, Minneapolis. Also, when on the 10th of June and the 10th and the 17th of June of 2009, when Senator Dorgan was to chair an aviation safety conference shortly after Air France, and I've got a reporter, it's not I have, she has me, but there's a reporter, investigative journalist, whose name is Barbara Hollingsworth. She used to write for the Examiner in D.C. She now writes for a private news agency, and I can put you in touch with her via email after the show if you'd like. She interviewed myself, another pilot whistleblower named Dan Hanley from United. I was from Northwest. Newton Dixon was from Continental. John Stepanovich was from Continental. And she was aware of a Delta pilot named Wayne, the middle initial O, last name Witter, like Dean Witter. And she was exposing in real time around the 10th and 17th of June, not just who was going to speak at the conference, but who was being disallowed. In other words, the investigative journalist, Barbara Hollingsworth, thought that you really can't figure out aviation safety if you're gagging the whistleblowing pilots. So she tried to get us to appear in front of Dorgan. I think I'm very transparent, unlike whoever that is at 1600, but I don't fight fair because I'm not put in this position to fight fair. I'm put in this position to win the battle, and we're going to win it or die trying. But rather than play their game and go to a shrink like the other guys did, and when they go to these shill shrinks, I'll give you the name of two shill doctors that have done a lot of work for ALPA, quieting down pilots. One's in Los Angeles, California. His surname is Elliott. He's a shrink. That's who they tried to send me to. I didn't go because I know what the game is. You go out there and you either promise to shut up or you get a diagnosis that you have a mental infirmity, and they're not trying to penalize you money-wise or penalize you ego-wise. They're trying to make sure that you are written up as being unreliable so you cannot be an expert witness in court. Well, when Boeing gets attacked by Riddick Law from Chicago, and when Malaysia Airlines and Boeing get attacked by the Chinese attorneys, I think I could be a very good expert witness in saying Boeing's clean and Malaysia was not told by the International Federation of Airline Pilots that the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot was on their aircraft. So if the company doesn't understand the ramification and the facilities, and the pilots don't know where the switch is, how in the world can anyone expect more passengers not to die in similar accidents? So I don't know how many total passengers have died, including the 4 flights of 9/11 and the 5 flights since. I do know that the only person or the only country that's given us much credibility or believed what we're saying, and it's all credible, it's all cross-referenced, Russia. And so I've sort of got a cyber relationship with Russia and Vladimir Putin that benefits Russia, but it also benefits the truth. And the truth is the people that are killing innocent passengers in the world's airliners are the same cabal, and we've exposed them. And if you want a soundbite, Serco, S-E-R-C-O. Carrie, over to you.
Okay, well, excellent. Along those lines, if you would not mind going into more detail about Serco, as you call it. I certainly have called it the octopus. Danny Casolaro called it that. And I assume you're familiar with the Promise Software story. And also, if you are familiar with that, you perhaps are familiar with the AI that is in essence figuring out what humans are going to do next, and the dark cabal are working with this AI, as you may imagine. So I don't know if you know about that background and whether or not you've gone down the rabbit hole in that direction. But if you have, I'd be very interested to hear. But what is your understanding of Serco, in at least in whatever ways you want to describe it?
I'll describe it the same way you did. Serco is the octopus. If I said that on your radio show in 1991, I'd be dead just like Danny Casolaro. He died, I don't know the date, it was August 1991. It was in Martinsburg, West Virginia. It was in a Howard Johnson's hotel, I think. Allegedly, he had cut his wrist with an old Milwaukee beer can about 32 times. You know, this reminds me of the banker in Colorado who shot himself in the head with a nail gun 8 times. I don't care if you're a banker or a retired guy like me. If for whatever reason you shoot yourself in the head with 1 nail, that's going to be it. You're either going to be dead or you're not going to pull the trigger. So Danny Casolaro was killed because he was exposing the octopus. As far as AI promise, and you didn't mention it, but I'm sure you know it, Inslaw, Inslaw. Okay, AI promise, Inslaw, they're all related to my sister. And my sister's name, if you missed it, was Christine Marcy. She and some of her cohorts got this promise software, and they actually translated it into French and sold it to some enemies of the United States of America. And just to further connect the dots, on Serco, which is the octopus. And you know what? Serco can come. I'm sitting in an office right now at 401 Main Street in Plum City, Wisconsin. My back's to the window. So if Serco had any people that were good at silencing or cleaning up details, have at it. And because my camera's looking right at you if you're behind me. But anyway, Serco, one office of Serco in Washington, D.C., and you know my last name is McConnell, so this is really remarkable comedy. There was an organization for years called McConnell International. And when David noticed that my sister, who worked at McConnell International, was doing a lot of bad things, we put the spotlight on McConnell International. Okay, the guy who ran it was Bruce McConnell. Bruce McConnell called me in October of 2008 and said, "Hey, Field, this is Bruce. Would you and David stop talking about McConnell International because you might cause me to lose some income?" I told him, we don't give a rat's rear end about your income. We give a rat's rear end about innocent people not being targeted. So I said, you called the wrong number if you want the lights to be turned off. We're going to go after you with both of us now. Before it was just David going after you, but I'm going to join him. Well, it was very shortly thereafter, and you can check all this out. It's on, nothing hides forever. McConnell International decided they better go out of existence, so they changed their name. And it's hilarious. They're so inept. They changed it to Clinton Rubin. And the Clinton is Hillary, and the Rubin is the former Secretary of the Treasury. So they go from one scuzzball, McConnell, to two scuzzballs, Clinton Rubin. And then when we started talking about Clinton Rubin, they changed their name to Serco. Now, of course, Serco already existed, and Serco is about the fourth generation of names, too, in their own organization. But Serco at the time had the guy run the office in Washington, D.C. named Brad King. I know nothing about him. He knows everything about me because we went after Serco and Brad King as being basically the contracting agency which appears to have done the majority of the coordination of the attack against the United States of America, known as the attack of 9/11. So yes, I know about Promise.
Okay. Your last name is McConnell. I'm not sure, but is that, are you related to Mike McConnell, who was the director of intelligence for a while?
No, I'm not. Well, first of all McConnells are related at some point. It's a name originally from northern Scotland, and when the McConnells got kicked out of Scotland, some went to Northern Ireland, and I've met them over there, and some went to America. But as far as I know, there's no close relationship between Mike McConnell and myself, other than, and this will cause you to laugh, and I can see you could use a good laugh right now. If you were to put in McConnell and Director of Global Operations, Mike McConnell's name would come up, and so would mine. And I can tell you right now with the recorder going that I am not the Global Operations Director, which by the it spells God, G-O-D. I'm not the Global Operations Director of Abel Danger because Abel Danger doesn't exist. It only exists when we get on our own radio show Monday, Wednesday, or Friday with a very active, very committed, fearless, and I don't want to turn this into a sermon, but I'd say 90% of the people that can understand what we're talking about, David and I, because he talks confusingly, inadvertently, because he's so intelligent, he can't make a plain statement. And I can make a plain statement. Right now, here comes one, and everyone's looking at you. You're wearing a white or cream-colored blouse. You have red or lavender or somewhere in between lipstick. You have 2 eyes, nose, and hair hanging straight down. That's a true statement, and I observe that. But what I do is I take David and the research team's minute and complex information, and I create fiction around it that everybody can enjoy because everybody likes old music, and people who heterosexuals can relive their ill-spent youth because I make it look like there's some people in their 60s out there having a lot of fun, which there may be. I wouldn't know. Everything I do is fiction, but I have to understand the facts to create the fiction in a way that we do not get sued for libel. And we get that question once a week. How come you can say Hillary Clinton is involved in 9/11 and she doesn't sue you for libel? Well, because if she tried to sue me or David or us or Abel Danger, she'd be laughed out of court for suing Abel Danger because it doesn't exist. In the case of David and I, any judge that had nerve, which is very, very few, but they're probably going to grow some nerve shortly, they'd say, well, Hillary, they've been saying this about you for 7 years, and under the rules of equity, if you don't object within 3 years, it's a tacit acknowledgement that what they're saying is true. So these people, like my sister Hillary, Rudy Giuliani, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, the guy from Nevada named Reed, these guys can't object to what we've done because we've been doing it for 55,000 pages. As you witnessed this morning, we send it directly to the agencies that should go after them, and at some point they will. We've got the FBI to act before. Just yesterday, the FBI was acting on some of our information. Oh yeah, they locked up 3, I'm not a Republican or Democrat, because for someone to say, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, what they're saying is, I don't understand that in 1892, the false two-party system was created at the Bankers Manifesto meeting in Omaha, Nebraska in 1892, and it's a gigantic wedge to split the truth in America. So I'm not besmirching everyone who is a Republican or Democrat. I'm just saying you're falling victim to a terrible, terrible lie. And if you get the truth will set you free. And out there in California, a lady named Janis Joplin used to sing about that. So over to you.
Okay. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, let's go down the road of the false flags. Unless you have anything you want to add to what we've been talking about, and just to bring it sort of back to the subject, Flight 370, and it being taken off course and disappeared, in essence, from the public's view, at any rate, probably in an underground base at this time. The individuals I have back channel people telling me are working hard, and they would have had, those 20 scientists had to, I would think, even logic says that they would have had to be part of the process of the disappearance of the plane. I personally think they were testing out some technology and also making a political statement to certain parties. There are various reasons for them to do that, and I don't know all of them, but I know a few. And one can speculate about that. But in terms of the disappearance and the individuals who are either still alive and now being programmed and going to work for the dark side under the ground for the rest of their lives, or wherever else they may be, if assuming that they don't just kill off the other passengers. We know that the 20 scientists will be kept alive because they obviously are employees. But do you have anything to add about that story? I do know that information about the satellite imagery and information about that was being fed to the Malaysians about the downing of the plane came from this company, and Chip Tatum had been on Veterans Today writing an article outlining the name of the company and the background behind it. And when you drill everything down, it's all owned by Bush. That's Bush Sr. So we've got Rothschild on the one hand with Freescale, and on the other hand we've got Bush. So we've got Rothschild and Bush both being implicated in the cover-up and the disappearance of the plane, as far as I can see. But do you have anything else to add to this?
I don't think so, because that would be wasting your time and your viewers. Everything we've done is public, and if they want to find anything we've written about MH370 and the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, they can just Google MH370 plus BUAP plus my last name, and they'll be up for days reading, or they can go to our website, abeldanger.net. So what's the next question on this subject?
Okay, so with their sort of pattern of behavior being exposed here, at least in regard to these disappeared planes. I wanted to go around to the false flags because I know that the two of you and I would love to get David Hawkins back if you thought that the technology would allow us to have both of you on at once. I'm assuming that having three people on is throwing him off here, but I don't know what your thought is on that. But at any rate, I'd like to go into Aurora, Colorado, Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, and various other false flags that have recently, in the not so distant past, taken place. And maybe if you could talk in general about anything that you maybe have tried to bring forward, or David had your organization that you thought maybe wasn't getting enough notice, or linking these things up in a bigger picture kind of way that you might be able to do.
Yeah, I was just texting someone to cancel an appointment, but yes, we can talk about. I'll talk about 5 false flags that all have the same signature. Aurora, Colorado, that was July 20th of 2012 off the top of my head. Cudahy, Wisconsin was either August or September thereafter. The mother of all grossly mismanaged street theaters is Sandy Hook. The Boston Marathon was grossly mismanaged, and the one that we claim we blocked. And see, the beauty of our making the claim we blocked it is when we published information in sufficient detail that caused Janet Napolitano to step down from DHS. And later, in fact, specifically on the 26th of December of 2013, a guy named Reuben Bradford, police commissioner of Connecticut, stepped down because once these people are educated on the totality of what they're involved in, as opposed to their compartmentalized knowledge, they get scared, as they well should get scared, because everyone involved in Sandy Hook is either guilty of felonious false police reports claiming 26 kids were killed, or it's 20 kids plus 6 adults, I guess. Those kids were all 6s and 7s. That's a clue. In English slang, 6s and 7s means chaos. And so these people in the United Kingdom, Serco's United Kingdom, by the way, the City of London bankers, that's a sovereign piece of real estate surrounded by England and London. But these people aren't fooling everybody. They're fooling the vast majority. And but they're not fooling everybody, and so the remnant of us that can see what's going on, we will continue to aggressively and fearlessly expose the truth. So let me just give your listeners a Google search of 5 items that will completely educate them on Sandy Hook. The first item is a surname of the governor, Malloy, M-A-L-L-O-Y. The second term is 5 letters run together, space, and then another letter. Caps or small, it doesn't matter. D as in Delta, M as in Mike, O as in Oscar, R as in Romeo, T as in Tango, space, V as in Victor. None of your listeners, or if any of your listeners have ever heard of DMORT, I'd be shocked. But they can all go to Google or any search engine and put in DMORT, and they will find that that's a 10-region U.S. portable morgue service. And V stands for, that's Roman numeral for 5. Region 5 is Chicago. When Sandy Hook had their false flag terror on the 14th of December of 2012, that was a Friday, I think. When they had it, why would they call in Chicago's morgue the day before the event? The day before the street theater took place in Sandy Hook, the Chicago portable morgue showed up in Sandy Hook. That's also a pattern. They keep getting the timing wrong. On 9/11, the lady that reported the Building 7 down, she reported it 20 minutes before it fell down, and it was clearly visible over her shoulder. The Haiti heartquake, that's my choice of words. I'm saying that the earthquake in Haiti was a HAARP, H-A-A-R-P, quake. The U.S. relief effort in Haiti arrived the day before the earthquake. These people really have a problem with timing. The alleged shooter at Sandy Hook, Adam Lanza, according to the Social Security Death Index, he died the day before he shot everybody. The boneheads, and I'm going to get a little colorful here. I won't offend any of your listeners, but the boneheads that think that everybody in the United States of America is going to become afraid of a very diverse group of actors that are crammed down our throats. You can take this diversity to an extreme, and the diverse players get a little bit nervous when some non-diverse players illuminate them for the crimes against we the people. And David and I are not sold out to America or North America. We care just as much regarding, a little Down syndrome kid in Kazakhstan, or the Rwanda genocide people, or the Ottoman genocide people, or the Chinese guy that had a tank drive right up to him. I don't care who's being oppressed. David and I and Abel Danger, everyone who supports us, care greatly that the oppressors are a very, very small organization who has vast resources, and they think they can buy terror. Well, you can buy terror to a large degree, but at some point, payback, I'm going to speak like a Marine now, and I won't finish the phrase, but payback is a mother. And we're about ready to deliver some payback to Circo the Octopus. And you can kill Danny Casolaro right in your home state there, Kerry. There was a Marine whose name just came to me. His name is James Sabow, S-A-B-O-W. They killed him too. Anybody can Google and email you a package on James Sabow. He was a Marine aviator, an A-6 pilot, and a Harrier pilot. He was a full colonel at El Toro, the Marine Air Base that used to be at the south end of Los Angeles. And a bunch of people, in fact, didn't you just mention GHWB?
Yes.
Bush?
Yes. Well, let me say, while you're naming people that were killed unjustly, actually murdered, Michael Hastings, the Rolling Stone reporter who reported on what was going on in Afghanistan, who was killed in his Mercedes in a most bizarre way, is another person that you could list.
Yeah, I agree, and there's plenty of them. There's a guy over in Amsterdam who is a structural demolition expert. His name was Danny Jowenko. They drove his car into a tree. The number 2 lady in England, whose name is Miriam Clegg, her dad was a Spanish judge. They drove his Mercedes into an object. It's called Boston Brakes. Princess Diana was murdered because she was carrying an Arab baby. You know what? If Prince Charles doesn't want to provide her with DNA, somebody else will. Somebody else did. And if that embarrasses the royals, well, they can kiss my royal whatever, because I don't acknowledge royals. I think we're all created equal. What do you feel about that, Gary?
Absolutely agree with you on that one. And as probably Bush would say, some are more equal than others. But at any rate, in terms of the to get back to the false flags, do you want to detail anything more about Aurora? Because there is a link up that I have found that has to do with the fathers of, and we seem to have lost your audio. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Now I can. For you were seeming to go offline a bit. At any rate, I'm the fathers of the supposed patsies. They're employed by in both cases very interesting organizations. Adam Lanza's father employed by a bank as a banking concern, as I recall, and the other boys whose name escapes me at this moment. His father working for a very substantial software concern that was investigating financial, was a sort of almost an AI, a small artificial intelligence. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm answering your questions in writing, so the people that are on camera can see me answering your questions before I verbally answer them.
Okay.
You want me to verbally answer your
Yeah,
question?
that'd be great.
Okay, Peter Lanza is the guy you're talking about. who allegedly is Adam Lance's father, the organization he worked for and why they had to get him to shut up. The organization is GECAS.
Oh, right. That's right.
General Electric. It's the aviation leasing branch of General Electric. General Electric is one of the biggest jet engine manufacturers in the world, and their leasing branch, they needed to cover up their involvement in 9/11, and involved they were. In fact, GCAS underwrote the making of a film or two. One was called Flight 93, one was called United 93. Both of them are totally inaccurate. One of them was shot on a Royal Air Force base in the United Kingdom, and the name of the base escapes me, but it could be Blackwood Studios, and it might be Bryce Norton Air Force Base. But anybody who can Google right now, if you Google RAF base used Flight 93, it'll come up, and I do think it's Blackwood. But the details really don't matter. We can fill in the details later. You're absolutely right that Peter Lanza worked for GCAS. GCAS had to cover up the truth of 9/11. One you didn't mention was John Benet Ramsey's father. John Benet Ramsey's father owned a corporation that the Department of Transportation wanted to acquire. So little John Benet was killed by someone. We think we know, exactly who, but it doesn't matter. That could be conjecture, and we do our conjecturing in fiction. The other one you mentioned was Aurora. The guy with the orange hair, his last name was Holmes, was it not?
That's right.
And his father was a super brilliant guy that was working in some type of MI or mind control. And of course, you saw clearly on the cameras of either Holmes or his doppelganger, which is a big word for body double. He looked like a complete deranged mess. Let me go a different direction, though. These airline pilots who have been accused of being troublemakers like myself or whistleblowers, sometimes they get put in mental hospitals overnight and medicated with stuff they don't know what it is. Dan Handley, the United pilot, was medicated against his will. You know what? I'm not letting the medical community come anywhere near me. I medicate myself every night with something that I really enjoy. It's called truth serum. And that's not why I'm willing to tell the truth, but knowing that at some day, all good things must end, including human life. You know, I'm living my life on my terms, and I've been called, and that's the proper word. I won't go too much in that direction. It may offend some of your listeners, but I've been called to expose evil, and I am exposing evil. David and I will expose evil, and if we die trying, that's all good. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay, so yes, there's a link up that involves neuroscience as well, and neuroscience is also very involved in creating what we call super soldiers and certainly mind control, among other things. And so I guess you've gone down this road, and you understand what's been going on with Aurora. What about the other false flags? Can you maybe talk about the Boston bombing and what you think went on there? But before we leave the the Sandy Hook, where do you think the children are?
I'm not sure the children ever existed unless they were crisis actors. I don't know if I finished my thought there. The 5 things that'll expose Sandy Hook, and they've exposed it so much so that Janet Napolitano and Reuben Bradford, the police commissioner from Connecticut, they couldn't stand the heat, so they got out of the kitchen. The 5 items, and I'm going to hold fingers up so I can keep track this time. Number 1, Governor Malloy, Malloy. Number 2, DMORTV, DMORT, capital V, DMORT Region 5. Number 3, HSEEP, Homeland Security. You can't believe this, Gary. Exercise Evaluation Program. Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program. Now we're going to move back to Denver, where a guy named John Simmons, Simmons, has a company named Crisis Actors. They're paid to go look like they're shooting up schools and causing bloodshed. They also use them, not crisis actors. The name Crisis Actors is a company name in Denver. The actors in Boston were Red Tree Production actors. I'll cover that in a minute. The fifth thing, I put my fingers down, almost lost track. The fifth one, after Crisis Actors, is Vision Box. The lady who runs Vision Box has named Jennifer somebody Rincon. I'm not being dismissive of her. I don't remember her middle name. Her surname is Rincon, which is Spanish. That means absolutely nothing. I mean, I speak Spanish, and the fact she has a Spanish name is nothing other than an interesting, accurate side point. I'm going to back up real quickly to Cudahy, Wisconsin, the one that everybody's forgotten about. What we've done as Abel Danger is we got the FBI director of Milwaukee removed from her position. She had a very colorful track record that started in Chicago, went to New York City. Then she was given control of the FBI in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If her name comes to me, and it probably will, I will speak her name. Otherwise, it can certainly be Googled by putting in Abel Danger plus Chips plus Hamish, Hamish, plus Milwaukee plus director. But we published it. We got her removed. We got her removed by pointing out that on the morning that the Cudahy Shake false flag was being produced in Milwaukee, she was talking to her FBI boyfriend, who was one of the big shots in New York, and you can't make this stuff up. He was at a Sikh temple in New York while she was at a Sikh temple in Milwaukee trying to claim that the Sikhs or the Muslims or somebody other than the octopus is trying to kill people, and they're not getting away with it. Sandy Hook, I've described the five search terms: Malloy, DMORT 5, HSEEP, Crisis Actors, and Vision Box. What I haven't discussed with that is the police chief. He's the senior police spokesman for the Connecticut State Police, 62 or 63 years old. His name is J. Paul Vance Sr. What a coincidence. The Attorney General of Connecticut is J. Paul Vance Jr. The medical examiner at Sandy Hook was a guy named H. Wayne Carver, originally from Skokie, Illinois. He also is the medical examiner. Well, let's stop right there. What are the odds you want to go to a medical examiner named Carver? Not me, thank you. But anyway, he was also the medical examiner that in 1986, when an airline pilot from Eastern put his flight attendant wife through a chipper shredder, he was the medical examiner that proved murder without a body because they got one identifying thing out of the chipper shredder, and that was a portion of one of her teeth. That's evil. Now, that's not corporate evil. That's an airline pilot going off the deep end because he's concerned about losing half of his assets. I'd say he lost a lot more than he lost all of his assets. He lost his freedom. He also caused a female to die, which is not fair. If you want to kill somebody, kill yourself and leave the rest of us alone. So then I think I've covered Sandy Hook well enough. And if not, if anybody in your listening group wants to find anything we've ever written about Sandy Hook, if they go to abeldanger.net, there's a search window. Every one of the 55,000 pages we've ever written is archived. So let's go over to Boston and make that a real short expose. That was not an external attack. That was not even a bombing. A couple of the FBI guys that knew what was going on, they got physically tossed out of an airborne helicopter to shut them up. Are you familiar with these two former SEALs that recently died aboard the Maersk, Alabama, the ship over there where they were trying to protect it from pirates? Does that ring a bell or did that escape you?
I guess that escaped me, but it certainly makes sense.
Okay, well, let me tell you how they're connected to Boston. They worked for a private security firm called Trident, Trident. They were on board the Maersk, Alabama, and because it was operating where the Somalian pirates are sponsored by Serco. I'm going to repeat that, where the Somalian pilots are sponsored. They're sponsored by Serco because Serco insures all the ships. They insure the ships, then they send the pirates, and they collect insurance. Serco is the octopus, and you know what? Here's how unafraid I am of Serco and the octopus. I'm considering going over to England and meeting David Hawkins' brother, John Hawkins, who has access to the royals and to the military, and I'd love to go over there and tell them the truth because, see, the UK military is being dismantled just like the American military, and it's being dismantled by the same group. The reason that we have this imposter in the White House is because the evil parties in Serco and their cabal, they want the United States military to become totally toothless and fangless, and it's not going to happen on my watch. And if they kill me, that's great. I mean, I'm not looking forward to being dead, but I'm not looking forward to being quiet either.
Okay, what were these Navy SEALs silenced over? What exactly were they going to reveal, or would they have known?
They were snipers on top of the tall buildings in Boston, and so they got a God's eye view of what really went on in Boston and where they weren't flash grenades, but they were a type of explosive that really has no power. It makes noise, it creates smoke, but it doesn't do any physical damage. And let me give you the Google search that picks apart the Boston operation. If people were to Google a name, the name is M-A-R-G-I-E, Margie Sullivan, like Ed Sullivan's last name, Margie Sullivan, plus DHS, Department of Homeland Security, plus BOGT, that's Victor Oscar Golf Tango, plus Dunning, D-U-N-N-I-N-G. If you Google that, let's see, Margie, I forgot one. No, I didn't. Red Tree Productions. Yeah, I did forget that one. R-E-D-T-R-E-E, all one word. Red Tree Productions, DHS, Margie Sullivan, B-O-G-T, and D-U-N-N-I-N-G. Can you picture the man in the wheelchair with the leg blown off? Do you recall that?
Yes.
He is an actor. That's B-O-G-T. He was paid $300,000 to have the same leg that he lost in Afghanistan in November of 11 blown off in front of a camera. Unfortunately, as he was being pushed by Dunning through the center of the camera, his leg really did fall off, his prosthesis. And so they had to strap it on real quick so it could fall off again. These guys are very unprofessional when it comes to trying to trick Americans.
Okay. Are you aware that Snowden has released information regarding the false flags and the strategy that they use, and that he's relating it to GCHQ for some reason? Although we know that the cabal in America is very much involved as well, but you probably know that there's a very substantial relationship between the NSA and GCHQ, right?
Yes, I do. And GCHQ, the headquarters is in Bletchley Park, England. And on the evening of the royal wedding, which is also the evening of Osama bin Laden's third death, I was in Bletchley Park, and I was over there to explain a movie. And I know this sounds unprofessional, but it's not over till the fat lady sings. The name of the movie that we put out in 2007 was Captain Sherlock Solves 9/11. And I was live on TV from England the same time the royals had told Obama, not only you're not invited, but don't even think of coming to the wedding, which may or may not be the reason of the timing of the Osama bin Laden Fox capture. You can't capture and kill a guy that's been dead since December of 2001. But not only did they fake the capture of Osama bin Laden, but then they killed all the SEALs. The name of the helicopter, Extortion 17. That's a violation of two protocols. You never put all of a SEAL team on one flying vehicle.
Yes, absolutely.
You put them on 3 flying vehicles, and then you never put them on anybody except one unit. There's one unit in the Army that is tasked with flying the SEALs. And on the day they had to quiet down these SEALs, they put them on a Army National Guard beat-up old helicopter so that they would get rid of one beat-up helicopter instead of 3 good ones. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay, but to get back to the GCHQ and the Snowden documents that he's putting out, did you happen to see that?
No, I did not. But before this day ends, I'll be an expert on it because I'll get information from our listeners. They'll be. It's just like rats leaving a deserted ship, but we're the opposite. We're like superior rats that are climbing aboard the ship to take control of it. And right now, around the world, there's people that support Abel Danger Googling the information relating Snowden to the GCHQ, NSA false flag techniques.
Okay. Very good. And Camelot actually has the same kind of listeners that do something similar. Always researching, always digging up the clues based on the broadcast that they hear, and then researching to find out more. So they're very, very valuable as well. Uh, all right, I'm really, really happy with this broadcast, and I know we've been going for a while now. So the last thing I would ask you at this time is whether you would be willing to take a few questions from the chat that has been ongoing here, at least at my end, on Livestream itself. And if there's any pressing questions that people have, that you would be willing to spend a bit more time just answering those questions.
If I can answer them, it'll be my pleasure. If I can't answer them, I'll write it down and get you an answer.
Okay, great. So now what I would ask is the people in the chat, if you can put your questions in all caps, because it helps me multitask over here and be able to read them and find them quickly in this barrage of chat that's been going on nonstop while we're talking here, then I appreciate it. So if you do have any burning questions you'd like me to ask our guest, Field McConnell, and I'm very sorry that David was unable to join us, but it would be great to get the questions here in the chat in all caps. So I'm putting the word out there, and it'll take a moment for them to get their questions out, I'm sure. In the meantime, do you want to talk about what you may be investigating currently, or anything that's absolutely pertinent to where you may be going in your investigations the next, I guess, few weeks or months?
Well, we take it day by day, and whatever, the chat room log from your chat and our chat, we will cross-reference these and see the information that comes through the chats, what we should follow. But what we're working on as recently as earlier today, we had a post go out, which I think is post number 1901, and we're naming names of who it is that's controlling Serco's manipulation of the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. media, and those names are grandchildren of Winston Churchill, Nicholas and Mycroft Soames, I think. My chat room, where I just went over to my chat room and made them the same offer, seeing if anybody wanted questions, and I don't have a question yet. But
Okay.
Anyway, the Soames brothers, one of them is set to become the CEO of Serco, so we're going to be focusing on pouring as much gasoline on Serco as we can while they have an empty CEO seat, because that leaves them a rudderless ship. And Serco really is, well, I like to try to make things simple because David is fairly complex. I'll make this statement and let Serco go ahead and sue me or prove me wrong. Serco attacked America on 9/11. Serco was involved in MH370, either probably not in a good way, and time will tell. The cargo and the passengers, to some degree, from MH370 probably still exist. That's not a statement of fact, that's an expression of opinion. But these guys will not have their way, and the Chinese, there are 150 dead Chinese, and the Chinese energy against Malaysia at some point will be turned against the Airline Pilots Association and the International Airline Pilots Association. And I'll give you a third airline that's going to be Airline Association. I don't know their new name because we scared them so bad that they changed their name from GAPAN, Guild of Air Pilots and Air Navigators. Those guys changed their names to something like the Honorable Company of Air Pilots now. I think they should have made it Air Pirates. Two names, Prince Philip, the really old geezer that claims he's married to the non-British Queen of England. He was the head guy at GAPAN from 1952 until he turned it over to either his son or his grandson, and I think it's his son, Prince Andrew. GAPAN worked with a guy who's now deceased named Lord Timothy Garden, and those guys are some of the people who put together the aviation plan for the attack of 9/11. And I've said this literally hundreds of times, either on radio or in print. my sister and Serco probably should have got some more articulate aviation assets because on day one, in other words, on the 11th of September of 2001, I knew that it was technology, not humans, flying those vehicles that were captured on film hitting the second trade tower. Over to you.
Okay, we do have some questions people have been kind enough to put into caps. I'm putting on the screen here part of an article by Chip Tatum, who wrote this article for Veterans Today, just outlining the name Harbinger Capital that was then changed after that, I believe, or originally was known as the Zapata Corporation and changed its name to the Harbinger Group. And this group, again, being responsible for, in essence, telling the Malaysian government what to think and what kind of satellite information they supposedly are seeing, which is probably bogus. Now, the questions here in the chat, I'm just going to go down a couple of them. Somebody is saying, was Sandy Hook School destroyed? Why was Sandy Hook School destroyed?
It was destroyed because the evidence would have been there that nothing happened, and the crime there is spoliation of evidence. On the day that the false flag took place at Sandy Hook, a legitimate police force would have put yellow tape all around the scene, and nothing could be brought in and nothing could be brought out until the forensic team had finished their investigation. That wasn't done. The entire school, and this is once again following the pattern. All of the debris from World Trade 1 and 2 was gathered up and moved in GPS tracked dump trucks to Fresh Kills 1 and Fresh Kills 9 to make sure that there's no evidence that would prove. It's hard to prove murder without a body. You can prove wrongful death, and I think that we will be bringing that charge at some point. But the Sandy Hook School is the only crime scene that I'm aware of that was completely demolished and removed. For instance, the Columbine High School, they didn't do it there. The Aurora Theater, they didn't do it there. Cudahy Sikh Temple, they didn't do it there. The Boston Marathon, they didn't do it there. They wouldn't have done it at Atlanta if we had not stopped what we believe was the plan to have a Boston Marathon type false flag on the 4th of July of 2013, which is the reason Janet Napolitano left. But they did it at Sandy Hook. And why would they destroy the entire school as opposed to look for forensic clues? I'll make a statement of opinion. I don't think there were any clues there because I don't think it ever happened. Over to you.
Okay, when you say it didn't happen, meaning what supposedly the so-called murders didn't happen, or I mean, the school did exist at one time. So what are you saying didn't happen?
The street theater didn't happen. In other words, the first responders that were right down the street, Sandy Hook Fire Department, they were kept from the crime scene. The Sandy Hook Police Department, whose chief is Michael Kehoe, who his facial expressions tell me that he understands now that he was an unwitting participant in a false flag event that went south. I would expect it. Yeah, the fairy tale about what happened at Sandy Hook never happened. Those kids, I don't believe any of those children were killed. That's my opinion. That's not a fact. But a lot of those child actors had been in the area for a couple of years, and they did their little acting bit, and then they went back to where they came from.
Okay, well, behind the scenes, though, because I did deal with a remote viewer on this situation, and my understanding is that there was a link up in terms of symbolism with what was going on in the banking industry, and that it was used to some degree as a cover up for a takedown that was going on in Wall Street at the time. That they also have these huge computers under the ground in the New York area, and that there's all the symbolism around Sandy Hook revolves around street names and so on that all relate to the banking industry, and that there's some kind of this is also true, I believe, of the Boston bombing, and it's true also of another one of the events. In other words, that was some kind of behind the scenes battle going on within the cabal between the British monarchy or Illuminati on the British side that run by the Rothschilds and the cabal the run by George Bush that was involved behind the scenes. So did you know why they even bothered to go to all this trouble?
Well, they're terrified that they're losing control of the world. The people that have run the world for a couple hundred years have been quoted as saying they'd rather have the world burn up than to lose control of it. Well, unfortunately, regardless of what your faith value system is, whether you have one or not, it doesn't matter to me, I'll make a statement. These people that are serving Satan, they don't believe that God exists, and he does exist, and they're hacked. The people, you mentioned GHWB, you mentioned the Rothschilds, you mentioned some banking people in Europe, in England, and you didn't mention Amsterdam. Well, that's Europe. But the bankers are all at each other's throats right now because they're a very small group. The people that put on these false flags, the families, in other words, if you take a family name like McConnell, which is not involved on the bad side, but there would be 300 family names that are now infighting because they think that part of the other team, for instance, if you're in England with Rothschild, you're thinking that my sister Christine Marcy might be leaking information to us. My sister Christine Marcy might get upset with Angela Merkel of Germany, thinking our information has to be coming from Germany. And there's terrible infighting because they know they're going down, and they will start cross-implicating each other aggressively and soon, I believe. But once again, that's an opinion, and it's a fact that will either be played out or be incorrect.
Okay. All right. I have to take a small break here just because I have to hook up my computer. One of them, the one with the questions on it, just lost all its electrical connection. So if you hold on 1 second, and you could entertain while I grab my plug that goes with the computer.
Okay, I will entertain by making a phone call and canceling my saxophone lesson. Watch this. First, I have to remember my saxophone teacher. And for those of you with Abel Danger, don't be discouraged. Everything's A-okay. Not regarding my saxophone, regarding the use of time. More than okay. This guy answers his phone. I see you're back now.
Yes, and I'm plugging in my computer, and I will have the rest of the questions up here in just a second. Sorry about this. I have a second computer that for some reason, when I'm on live stream broadcasting, it doesn't let me read the information off the actual live stream chat. Do you have any questions at your end while I'm trying to get this computer to bring up the questions?
Sure, I've got several questions and several answers, and I'll rattle them off as quickly and efficiently as I can. Sandy Hook was totally staged up. They all scored big money. They're talking about the actors and the people that had homes in Sandy Hook. $27 million worth of real estate was paid for by someone. I think I can tell you the someone. The someone who would have authorized the $27 million disbursement was Barry Swatero. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, you could use one of his post-Punaho names, like Barack Monir Ubaid or Barack Hussein Obama. And if you think that I'm dangling into dangerous territory, no, I'm not. I've taken 4 oaths to defend this nation, one in the Navy, one in the Marine Corps, one in the Air Force, and one that will be sealed, as it were, just like a lot of the information in MH30. But I've been called to do this, and it doesn't frighten me, and I am confident we will succeed. A lot of people, even town and state land paid off. In other words, everybody got zero debt. The financial transactions regarding Sandy Hook were on Christmas Day. I don't know if you've ever closed on a house, Carrie, but I bet you didn't do it on Christmas Day, Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday. Different dates are involved with Sandy Hook. I don't know what Golden Girl is talking about. She's in Germany, but 2 different dates that I'm aware of would be the 13th and the 14th of December of 2012. One is the day that Adam Lanza died. One is the day that the media says Adam Lanza died. One has to be correct, one has to be false. There were tunnels under the school used for nefarious purposes and connecting to other suspicious locations. I'm going to cough, pardon me. They were probably already decided to remove the school and put it to good use for the benefit of the public. There is likely a lot of symbolism in the Connecticut area, a longtime Luciferian or satanic stronghold. Yes, and one of those tunnels more than likely went 400 feet to the Masonic temple that was just off the school property. 99% on Christmas Day, the dates are recorded. They can't really expunge all the records everywhere simultaneously. All mortgage balances were zero. Jack Mack and I read they sold them off and moved them away. So the people that had the families that were grieving on camera, claiming they lost their loved ones, they were bought and paid for, and they've left town. All public records, anyone can go see for themselves. That comes from a very good researcher in Alabama who will be in Plum City. And Carrie said, sorry we could. I see you just sent a message to David Hawkins. And so I'll turn it back and put the ball in your court, let you ask me anything your listeners may wish to ask.
Okay, yes. I'm afraid I missed that message quite a while ago, and I don't know if David is even there because I just saw the message. Now I've got a question here, which actually is back about the Flight 370, and they say, would the black box have transmitted pings for easy location? Of course, this assumes the black box cannot be removed while airborne.
Yeah, the black box, if it had a good battery, which it should, I mean, it's required. Maintenance on airliners is extremely professional. Of course, evil people are even more professional. But the bottom line here, I think the easy answer is the black box would have pinged for 30 days, and it would have started pinging either by an explosive input or by being underneath the surface of the water. And we have a guy listening in our Abel Danger chat room that'll correct me if I'm mistaken, but the fact that it never pinged is the answer that people should look at. The black box has never been pinging. The engines pinged for 6 hours after the alleged turn off course. So my opinion could change before midnight because the information comes. And if my opinion does change before midnight, I'll send you an email, Carrie. But my opinion is the original course of the airliner would be course A. That's the flight dispatcher and the captain agreed that they would follow flight plan A. At some point after getting over the water, they turned and they started flying flight plan B, which might be loaded as an alternative flight plan in the technology, which is either FMGC and Airbus or FMS and Boeing. I think a flight plan C, I think right now, unless somebody comes up with some convincing evidence to the contrary, I think the United States Air Force or the United States Navy took the aircraft over and they got it on flight plan C, which appears to have landed at Diego Garcia. And Diego Garcia does have underground storage. To my knowledge, they don't have sufficient underground storage to stick a Boeing 777, but there's a big hangar at the north end of Diego Garcia where a 777 could be under the roof and therefore invisible to radar. And whatever the population of Diego Garcia is, it's almost 100% military or military contractors who will be ordered by their commanders to shut up.
Okay. Someone is asking, okay, what about the poor children? No, let's see, before I ask that, is Serco division, is Serco a division of the German Deutsch, I'm going to try to pronounce this word, Verteidigungsdienst, or from MI3?
I don't know the answer to that. We can get you the answer to that. I don't, in fact, I'll see it. Jack Mack in Alabama, if you understood that question, is Serco a subservient organization under the German group or under MI3? or MI5 or MI6. I'll state my opinion that I don't know. I'll state a fact, though, that I can find out within an hour. So if you want to go on to your next question, I'll let you know if I get the answer to that.
Okay,
question.
great. Now, a person is asking, what about these poor children who are just brutally treated, mistreated by the cabal? Can we save these children? How, where do they come from? 800,000 missing in U.S. alone.
Yeah, we can save those children. It's a little late for most of them because over in England, what they do historically is after they abuse the children, they throw them overboard from a ship. You want to find a ship that threw them overboard? Search Ed Heath, Edheth, and his boat was named Morning Glory. And he used to have Jimmy Savile provide him little boys, and then he'd do things the little boys didn't want done. And there he would unceremoniously toss them overboard. Then he'd drive his Morning Glory back to port, and he would take up his prime minister status of the United Kingdom. And if I misspoke, somebody at the Abel Danger website will tell me in the chat room. And by the way, we have a lady over in Germany who says it's the name you couldn't pronounce is Verteidigungsdienst, which is military. And I wonder if their initials wouldn't be BDG, but they must be a military intelligence organization. And a lot of the members of the cabal are from different countries. But who actually is the end deployer of Serco? I don't know, but we certainly will find out. I'll share that with you when we do find out. It could be during the show. Golden Girl just corrected me from Germany. In fact, she corrected herself twice. The organization in Germany is Bravo November Delta, BND, Bundesnachrichtendienst. That is intelligence. I don't know if she has an opinion or knowledge about whether they pull the strings at Serco. And see, we don't even need to know that. All we need to know is Serco is the octopus. They did MH370 and they did 9/11. They need to be bankrupted. They operate all the prisons in the United Kingdom. They operate all the prisons in Australia. They are associated with the prisons in the United States of America, where they're ripping off the taxpayers, because if your twin sister was sitting in a federal prison right now, it would be costing the taxpayers $168,000 a year to keep your twin sister there on either good charges or false charges, and it only costs about $40,000 a year to go to Harvard. So it's a lot cheaper to educate people than to imprison them. Something you and your listeners may not know is the privatization of the prison system under Serco allows false flag perpetrators to use prisoners as crisis actors. They let them out of prison for 48 hours, and they say, we want you, you're in prison for life because you're a murderer. Okay, we want you to go act like you're injured in Boston, or we want you to go kill somebody, and then you can have whatever form of sex you like with any object you like, including an orangutan, a 3-year-old boy, or a 12-year-old girl. But then if you do not come back and report back to prison on the 48th hour, we will kill you. In other words, they've got absolutely wonderful crisis actors who have nothing to lose by performing these organized atrocities against mankind, and they've got the perfect alibi because the prisons say, couldn't be our guys, he's been in prison for the last 13 years. So I think the answer to, can we do anything about the children? Yeah, let's start in England. Let's find out why Robert Greene is still in prison in Scotland, because he was trying to expose the atrocities against Holly Grigg. And why don't we just expose what goes on in Scotland as it pertains to organized pedophilia? And it goes on at the highest level of the UK government right now today. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay. Another person asking, are the false flag scenarios put into an AI program to create a playbook that the cabal follows? I'll say yes to that. And do you want to elaborate at all on that?
Yeah, in the United States of America, the plans are made at the Quantico office of the FBI. They figure out what scripts the American media might consume. If the American people, or some would say the sheeple, but the people that still waste their time looking at the mainstream media, there's an office in the FBI. There's a subgroup in the FBI office at Quantico, Virginia. And if you've ever heard of Quantico before. That's where all Marine officers are trained. And there's a lot of former Marines in the FBI. And the FBI is not the problem here. The problem is that my sister, Christine Marcy, and Jamie Gorelick, who was, Jamie Gorelick was number 2 at the Department of Justice under Janet Reno. They built a wall between the CIA and the FBI, and they attempted, and I'm going to give you a specific date, Jamie Gorelick, my sister, Janet Reno, with Hillary Clinton's acknowledgement participation, had an award given to them on the 22nd of October of 1996 by Al Gore. It was called the Gore Hammer Award, and they were given the award for effectively reinventing government. And the reinvention of government gave way to 9/11, which would have, it's called a TOPOFF exercise. It would have topped off, taken the head off the elected government of the United States of America. Then my sister, Jamie Gorelick, Janet Reno, both Clintons, and the rest of these evil bastards would have taken us into some form of even more severe police lockdown than it appears we're somewhat in right now. But it's not over until it's over, and I think the truth can stop these people because, as you mentioned 20 minutes ago, there's terrible infighting going on right now between the people trying to run the world. And I just say they might as well take their hands off the world and let the world run itself, or if you believe like I do, that there's a higher power than humanity, why don't we let the creator of the world run the world? He's done it since it started anyway. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay, another question. Rolls-Royce has an extra tracking system. Where is the engine now? And you kind of already answered that question, but do you want to relate anything about this extra tracking system?
I'm not sure. I don't know that. In fact, watch how fast our chat room is, and I'm going to see if Jack, yep, he's here. To the gentleman in Alabama, if you're aware of the X-Track system, my guess, it's my opinion, is they're talking about the pings that are automatically downloaded from the engine every 30 minutes while it's running. But let's use as a logical example, let's say the aircraft was landed at Diego Garcia and the engines were shut down. There'd be no automatic downloading of the engines by virtue of the fact they're not running. Now, if there's another locator on those engines, I'm not aware of it. But if it can be substantiated that they do have some type of a geolocator on Rolls-Royce Trent engines, that information will come to us and we'll share it with you.
Okay, somebody says Heath's boat is called the Morning Cloud.
Oh, okay. I said Morning Glory, so I stand corrected.
Okay. And let me see if I've got any more questions here. What about the current exercise going on that started today, DHS, military, etc.?
Did they have a name for that exercise? I think it's in the southeastern U.S., but I'm not certain.
No, but it would help if they gave us a location, certainly.
Yeah, I think what you have is sometimes we get questions from well-meaning tire kickers. In other words, there are people that come here looking for an easy answer when they failed to take the opportunity to do their own research. And I don't want to sound snobby about that, because I can't be snobby about that because I'm not a researcher. I'm a fiction writer.
Operation Capstone or Capstone?
Yeah, okay, I've heard that before. Operation Capstone, and that would suggest that they think that they're about at the end game. They're going to put a cap on this. And
yeah.
That's not right. But I've written that down. In fact, I'll write it down again in front of the camera. CAPSTONE and
yes.
Operation. Yeah, we'll get you an answer on Operation Capstone, and I would have it right now if one of our chatters who's usually here, who's known as the Swamp Rat down in the west end of Florida, that party is well aware of the upcoming exercises in the United States of America, any one of which can be taken rogue at any time. And I'm not meaningly putting you on the spot, but are you familiar with the term Zigbee, Z-I-G-B-E-E?
Well, let me say that I've heard you guys on your videos talk about it, and it's quite obviously the initials stand for something, and I heard think it was David Hawkins delineating each word and what it symbolizes. I think it's quite clever and obviously accurate. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yes, Zigbees are these little people that really don't know anything, and I don't want to sound political, racist, or anything other than a 64-year-old that's wide awake. Very, well, let's call him Barack Obama. He has nothing in his background that qualifies him to do anything. He's a community organizer, but he's sent to our nation to disorganize. He has fired 134 professional military officers. What military background does he have? None. So why is he calling the shots for the military? The military should be calling the shots, and that's sort of an interesting choice of words. The United States military should be calling the shots for him. On October 24th of 2013, all people in the U.S. Congress, there's 541 of them, 535 congressmen and senators and 6 admin people, the entire Congress was ordered to get onto Air Force transports on the morning of 24 October of 2013 and fly to a funeral for a long-term congressman from Florida. And late at night, 9 p.m., actually 8:59 p.m., Wednesday night, the 23rd of October, I sent a message to Congress and Senate that if any of those congressmen and senators were foolish enough to get on the airplane, I hope they didn't think they're really going to Florida, because it's about a 50-50 chance they're either going out to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, to be profiled and detained, or if they're good people, which would be very few of them. And I don't want to sound like I have no faith in the U.S. Congress and Senate. I have great faith in them. I know they're going to do exactly what they're told. They're going to be given a fat retirement the minute they quit. They're not going to rock the boat. They're not going to do what their constituents ask them to, and they're just going to allow the wholesale slaughter of the United States of America and our Constitution. But there was 50% chance, and I put this in writing, and I'll provide it to you. In fact, if any of the Abel Danger people are in your chat room, they can provide it to you while I speak. But the email from myself to Congress on the 23rd of October of 2013, I said it's too close to call, but you're either going one of 2 places, actually one of 3 places. You can either go to Leavenworth and be detained by the Army, you can go to Guantanamo Bay and be detained by the Navy, or you can go to Whiskey 386, and everyone in your listenership should write this down. Capital W, Whiskey, capital W, 386, capital A, Alpha. Whiskey 386, Alpha Airspace. In fact, I think if you were to put in Whiskey 386 Airspace plus 23 October of 2013 plus Congress plus Abel Danger, you'd probably see the letter, but I will provide you that letter via email. I told Congress, if you're dumb enough to get on these airplanes, you might be killed in Whiskey 386 Alpha Airspace, as were the passengers on American 11, American 77, and United 175, or you may be going out to Leavenworth to have a profile done by the military justice system of the Department of Defense, whereupon the vast majority of you will be detained and charged with treason, and an extreme minority of you will be excused for having kept your oath to the United States of America. And if this sounds pretty wild, it's not. It's 100% accurate. I'm the guy that wrote the letter, and I don't want to put pressure on anybody to guess as to how many of the 541 people that were ordered to get on the airplanes on the morning of Thursday, the 24th of October, but the number was 30. 30 out of 541 got on the airplanes. I had further gone on in my warning, and I said, I said, this is fact, you can find it very easily. It's not like we make this up. The last time that Congress had been shut down for a funeral was 1921, and on that date, in 1921, they took a 1-hour lunch break. The public viewing was in the columbarium, or whatever you call that great big room in the Senate. It's round and it's got a big dome ceiling. They viewed the body, they had a brief memorial service, and everybody went back to work. I offered, and this is very offensive, so if any of your listeners don't want to be offended, they should probably plug their ears. But in my letter, just to turn up the heat, I said it would be a lot more efficient to the taxpayers of the United States of America if, rather than send 541 Congress critters down to Florida, why don't you just send a stiff up to Washington, D.C., and I'll pay for the freight. So I offered to pay whatever it takes to more polite terms, but stiff would be human remains. But I offered to personally pay for the freight for this dead congressman to show up in the Senate building for a memorial service that could have cost the taxpayers 1 hour of the senator's lunch break, and most of those fat cats look like they could skip a meal. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay, they have sent me a link here to Operation Capstone, to some documentation that announces what its purpose is, et cetera, et cetera. It looks, it's on the scripted sort of website, which people will be familiar with. And the link is in my chat. I'm not sure how I can get it over to you or your chat, but I'm sure that people can find this document. It is all about Operation Capstone. I guess it is operating today, or maybe, and I'm looking down the document here, it looks like it might be 2 days. Here it says Tuesday, April 1st, and went to Wednesday, April 2nd. What they're going to be evaluating is the nation's ability to respond to certain things. And it looks like it's got various, actually it's also going on at the end of April again. 7 days from March 27th to April 2nd is another portion of this operation. So it's going on from now, I guess, until the end of April, on and off in these various areas, dealing with various subject matters. One to do with Alaska is going on now, and it's commemorating the 9.2 magnitude Great Alaskan Earthquake, supposedly. So that doesn't bode well if you are thinking they might want to trigger an earthquake during their operation in Alaska. But anyway, that's Operation Capstone. The name is formidable and does tend to make one think that this might be some kind of very significant false flag that they might want to have that name for purposes of putting a cap on it, as you say. It makes one think of obviously the capstone on the Great Pyramid, at least symbolically. Any comments about that?
Yeah, up on top of one of the pyramids is the all-seeing eye, which is the Illuminati. But
Right.
As far as capstone, while you were giving that 3-minute dissertation, we had just received from Germany the same link you have, which starts out with deltaecho.scribd.com. And so that demonstrates how Abel Danger has people, and this is not even an Abel Danger radio show, but we've got people listening and participating. And so we've got the deal on Operation Capstone. Let me just say this, that on the morning of 9/11, there was an exercise going on in Alaska also. And the purpose of that exercise was to get as many air defense fighters up to Alaska, so they're as far as they can possibly get from New York City and Washington, D.C. But these exercises, every single exercise that's planned can be taken sideways. But as far as explosives go, I wouldn't look to Alaska. I'd look to Yellowstone Park. Yellowstone Park has pre-placed explosives, and I believe they're nuclear, placed by AMEC Corporation, AMEC. AMEC Corporation was also not only on the trading floors of Wall Street on 9/11, but they had just completed an upgrade and a threat viability inspection of Wedge 1 of the Pentagon. And on that morning, somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock, they turned over the control of Wedge 1 to the United States Navy. And within an hour and 15 minutes, Wedge 1 was destroyed. So these people aren't doing anything new. They're not bright. They're not prescient. They are cowardly. And the other place that I would look for something to happen of an explosive nature would be Assumption Parish in Louisiana. And that's where there's a bunch of toxic garbage bubbling up. And if they could get that to go down to New Orleans, they could finish off what Katrina started in 2005. But see, the problem is for the cabal, which includes Serco, they can't finish it off because Abel Danger and others keep exposing them and taking them off their timing, as I think we've done with our, participating on your radio show today.
Okay. And last question, and we're going to wrap this up. Someone is saying, let's see, please corroborate the connection between Flight 370 semiconductor employees, the 2 Navy SEALs found dead in the cargo ship, MV Maersk.
Yeah, I got that same question, and my question came from Otto P. Is that who asked you, Otto P?
No, this person, I believe, calls himself Real Banana.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the same person. The person that sent me the information, and I'll read it back to you. So it says, quote from Camelot chat. Oh, yeah, okay. He's quoting you. He's quoting Top Banana, so we're all on the same page. By the way, the person that sent me the quote is in Trondheim, Norway. So we got people in Norway and Germany helping us out at this very moment. We may have people in other countries. We have people in Panama, I see. I'll do what I can with this question. Please corroborate connection between Flight 370 semiconductor employees and the 2 Navy SEALs found on the cargo ship. I think those are 2 separate questions. I don't think there's any relationship between the 2 other than Serco benefits from both. Serco benefits in the case of Flight 370 and the semiconductor employees. The patent was held jointly by 5 entities, each with 20%. 4 of the patent holders, and the patent was not issued prior to the demise of Flight 370. 4 of the employees of Freescale own 20% stakes in that patent, and your friend, Mr. Rothschild, owned the other 20%. But because 4 of those people vanished, whether in real or were caused to believe they vanished, well, the patent, which has been approved now after the flight went down, the ownership of that patent under the law that I'm familiar with would go to the surviving patent holder, which is Rothschild. If that's true or not, we'll find out because somebody will object and correct me. The end user apparently has just been sent to me from Norway, also being CIA. But the 2 Navy SEALs found dead on the cargo ship MV, which I think is motor vessel Maersk. And Maersk is simply the company that built it there in Denmark, so there should have been more title, and the rest of the title would have been motor vessel Maersk, Alabama. The 2 Navy SEALs found dead, we already talked about that. They're former Navy SEALs. They were working for Trident Security, and they were the guys that were the snipers back in April of 2013 during the false flag Boston Marathon bombing that never existed. That was a fairy tale. Over to you, Carrie.
Okay. I said I was going to wrap this up, and I am, but I did want to ask you one last question about chemtrails, because you guys have been talking. You are a pilot, and I'm just wondering if you're aware of how they managed to get all the pilots to fly and do the chemtrails, some of whom don't seem to know what they're spreading in our skies. Have you ever gone down that road and tried to investigate it?
No, because so many other people have. I can put you in touch with a fellow up in Vancouver, and it's not David Hawkins, who knows more about chemtrails than anybody I'm aware of. The man's name is Tim White, and if you want his email, I'll email you after the show. But as far as airline pilots knowingly spreading chemtrails, that isn't going to happen. But see, the airline pilots don't know about the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot either, do they? So you can't expect pilots to be moral and integrity-filled grown-ups when they're held in the dark and treated like mushrooms.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, Field McConnell, thank you very much for all your time, your dedication, and your wonderful information. And I think that the people here have very much enjoyed it. Our chat is extremely active over here. When we hang up here, this will again go live here on this same channel, and people that missed things or came in late will be able to see the beginning part pretty much right away. And it will be ongoing on this channel. I will also be downloading it and re-uploading it with titles. I won't be taking anything out, and putting it on YouTube. And I have over 80,000 people that will be alerted to its presence on YouTube the minute it goes up. So we should have a pretty good audience for this, even though some people were not able to see it live. So thank you again for your time, and onward and upward. I hope that you will stay in touch with us. I'd like to. I'm very sorry that David Hawkins was cut off. Perhaps we could make a separate appointment with him, and he could talk about whatever he would like to talk about. Please do stay in touch.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. And I'm going to, as soon as you turn me off, I'm going to get an email sent to Tim White with a copy to you so he can tell you about chemtrails. And if you would be so kind, if you think of it, I know you, like me and David and most people, are very busy, but once your YouTube link is established, I'd sure appreciate it if you could email me that.
No problem. I will definitely do that.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Carrie. It's been a pleasure.
All right. You too. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye-bye.
October of 2000, the USS Cole went into Aden Harbor and was nearly blown to smithereens. And then, of course, I started to get exceedingly nervous because whilst I didn't know what was going to happen on 9/11, I could sense that the clouds were gathering for a truly devastating attack on the United States of America and or Canada and or the United Kingdom. There was nothing I could do to prevent it. But in the aftermath, as a layperson, I looked at the pictures, the television images of the way those planes were flown, and I knew from a mechanical engineering point of view there was something terribly wrong with that. I started my own radio show. I was on Coast to Coast, and I was desperately looking for someone in the United States because I've got a British accent, and I think I recognized that no one would be very interested in what I thought in the United States. And then someone who heard me on the Coast to Coast radio show put me in contact with a gentleman by the name of Field McConnell. And I think instead of summarizing what happened after that, perhaps I could hand the introduction of who he is over to him and yourself, because then he's basically known me from, I guess, December the 6th, 2006. And he and I have fought together and swum together and argued together for ever since.
Okay, excellent. So I'm actually trying to bring your website up here while we're sort of online here, because I think that would be helpful to people. So just one moment here. For some reason, I was going somewhere else. Great, it's not actually working. Is this your website that says Philbin?
Our website is abeldanger.net.
Okay. That's really okay.
As in Cain and Abel, ABEL.
Yes, got that. And now you've explained. So does it have Blogspot in the name?
No.
Either one of us would know.
It's just www.abeldanger.net.
Okay, very good. So, and that's useful to people. Right now, I'm bringing your website up. I'm actually going to look and see if there's a better picture. Yeah, there is, of you here on the front page, which is excellent. Because mine on my banner is a bit small. So you've been listening to David Hawkins. We're now going to be talking to Field McConnell. And Field, are you there? And he will be live on video. So I'm going to sort of shift things around here so that can happen. So can you pick up the story?
Sure. I'll pick it up where he left it off on the 6th of December of 2006.
Okay.
And I will pick that up and go forward after I bring you up to date on the intervening period between October 2nd of 1949 and December 6th of 2006. I was born into a United States Air Force family. My father had been a World War II bomber pilot. He was a POW. He was nursed back to health by my mother. He claims that in a moment of weakness in the hospital, he accepted her marriage proposal. They were married 62 years. She was an Army nurse. They're both at Arlington National Cemetery. They have 2 children, myself and my sister. If you want to picture a gunfight at the OK Corral, you can picture me as the guy with the white hat, my sister with the black hat, and she can explain herself. Perhaps maybe you'd like to interview her sometime. She's probably the most powerful person in America that nobody ever heard of until David Hawkins found her out. But enough about my sister. I was educated in the public school system until grade 12 when I went to, you might think of him as Barack Obama, but when he was at Punahou School, Barry Soetoro was 12 years behind me. I graduated from Punahou School in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1967. I then spent 4 years at the United States Naval Academy of Annapolis, where I graduated in 71. I then spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, where I was an aviator. And then I got offered a very nice job with the North Dakota Air National Guard, flying F-4 and F-16 interceptors. Shortly after I took my job with the North Dakota Air National Guard, I began a 31-year airline career. 29 at Northwest, where I had no hiccups or flaws, until on the 6th of December when I met David over a phone call. And we communicated so effectively between the two of us that by the 10th of December of 2006, I alerted the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, the FAA, and most importantly, the Airline Pilots Association, which is a union which ostensibly exists to enhance the safety of the traveling public, which they've been an abject failure, and I'd say a felonious abject failure. I'll fill you in on that later. Shortly after David and I announced to the world that the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot existed, the United States Department of Justice told my then employer, Northwest Airlines, that they needed to shut me up. And unfortunately for the Department of Justice and Boeing, not Boeing, and the Airline Pilots Association, and now Serco, which is the most powerful and evil corporation most people have never heard of, SERCO, in the old days they called it the octopus. David and I raised an issue that was so hot that they being the Department of Justice and the cabal that operates them, they wanted me to shut up. As you can clearly see, Carrie, I'm not a very quiet person. When they played hardball and tried to get me to be quiet, I just retired in a 10-minute decision. And I retired 8 years early, and that brings us around to what I did next. I got a phone call unsolicited from the Human Resource Department of Air Astana, A-S-T-A-N-A, a young lady. In fact, her picture was in one of the last two chapters. For those Abel Danger followers here at Carrie Cassidy's Project Camelot today, you may recall seeing a young woman sitting on the lap of what appears to be an Arab. Well, I was the Arab, and I'm not an Arab, but I had the Arab traditional dress on. And the lady sitting on my lap was actually the human resource lady, a Polish national who worked in Dublin, Ireland. And when my phone rang in December of 2007, she said, "Are you Field McConnell?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you retired?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you really retired?" And I said, "I really am retired." And she says, "Would you like to go to Kazakhstan and fly Airbuses?" I was at a little bit of an academic disadvantage since I'd never heard of Kazakhstan. But after seeing someone point a finger on a globe, I said, yes, it's always been my dream to go to Kazakhstan and fly Airbuses. The reason I say that, Carrie, is when I had filed paperwork regarding the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, by virtue of being offered a job to go to a Muslim nation and fly non-Boeing airliners, in this case the Airbus A320 family of airliners, I knew that some power greater than David, Carrie, and myself was active and was creating a real history for me to go and play out. And so I went to Kazakhstan and I flew for 18 months. And while in Kazakhstan, there were two more, I would say, attempts to get me to be quiet. One was on the 13th of December of 2008, and if this sounds ludicrous, I will send you the paperwork, Carrie. But on the 13th of December of 2008, I was operating an Airbus at Aterau, A-T-E-R-Y-A-U, destined for Astana, Kazakhstan, and the airplane was needlessly out of balance when they loaded it. They had the CG so far aft that the aircraft, which should have taken off at about 140 knots, became airborne slower than 100, which means we're going to die real soon if something isn't done. So I did something real quick, not because of my airline background, but because of my fighter pilot background. And I'm not being boastful and I'm not reliving my youth, but it appears that somebody wanted that airplane to crash, and once again, they didn't get it done. Later, in July of 2009, after I'd been over there 18 months, over there in Kazakhstan, flying with Muslim co-pilots around tall buildings in non-Boeing airliners, I had a check ride in Amsterdam, and I failed the check ride, which I didn't care because I wasn't over there for my ego or money. I was over there to be of service. The guy who failed me on the check ride, I think he probably was asked to fail me because the on-off switch for most pilots is money, captain's hat. They really love wearing their captain hat. See, this is what I look like if I put a captain hat on, which I could do if I could find one. I was never motivated by money nor dressing up like something I'm not. So when I flunked the check ride, I didn't care. I'd go back to the States and life would go on. But they decided, well, maybe you should go try it again. I said, well, you're paying it, so if you want me to go try it again, I'll be happy to. So I went and I took a check ride a second time, and I passed the check ride. And then Aristana, the company, goofed up the paperwork, and I think that was intentional. I don't know, and I don't care. So when the chief pilot of Aristana asked me to try to focus on Airbus policies and not Northwest Airlines policies regarding the Airbus, I said, I absolutely won't do that. I said, every fatal Airbus accident in the history of the world has been with an airline using Airbus procedures. I said, the airline, this is dated information, August 2nd. No, let's make that August 4th of 2009. I looked directly across the table at the chief pilot, who was a Boeing pilot, not an Airbus pilot. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, Northwest procedures have been used in the biggest Airbus fleet in the world. They've never had a fatality. And you're asking me to downgrade my thinking to a lesser formula for flying that's resulted in all the fatalities in the Airbus world? I said, I won't do it. He says, you mean you won't do it our way? And I said, yes. For the third time, I will not do it your way. He says, well, then you can't stay here. I said, great, perform your contractual obligation. Give me a first-class ticket through through Frankfurt, Chicago, and on to Fargo, and I'll go home Thursday because my contract is up 2 days from now. So that's basically, that's my history from the time I was born, through the Naval Academy, through the Marine Corps, through the Air National Guard, through Northwest Airlines, through Astana Airlines in Kazakhstan, and now for the last 7.5 years, since December 6th of 2006, David and I have been on the phone every single day. We've been on the radio on live stream 3 days a week for the last couple of years. Previously, we were at some other alternative radios that may or may not be disinformation sites. We don't care. The information is the same. And the information we have is very hot right now in Malaysia and China. And I think I sent you a copy of the letter, Carrie, but just today I encouraged aviation-minded people or the victims of the alleged victims, the survivors of the alleged victims of MH370, to just do a Google search that should really end this issue once and for all. That Google search is quite simple. It's MH370 plus BUAP, that's short for Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, and my surname, McConnell. And those three search terms should end the false flag history of hull loss, HULLLOSS. And my final words before I turn it over to you, Carrie, are MH370 was the fifth hull loss using the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot, and the other four were Atom Air 574, Kenya Airways 507, Air France 447, Sukhoi Superjet demonstration in May of 2012, and to this date, no one in the United States has been responsible in responding to my charges, whereas Russia and the GRU responded within 48 hours. So we've given up on the United States of America trying to end this charade, and we're going outside the continental U.S. with our information.
Hi there. Okay, well, we're back on the air again. It looks like for some reason, the contact request I sent to David isn't coming through, and that's why the picture isn't coming through. Technology is always very frustrating. But at this moment, why don't we just cut to the chase? And David, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself? And everyone will have seen the sort of announcement that I put on my front page, which details a bit of your background. And I believe that they would have been able to go over to your website and take a look at more about both of you. But you both have such varied backgrounds that I'd like you to introduce yourselves in a bit more detail. I can say that you're both articulate on false flags, Sandy Hook, Boston, Aurora, Colorado, and one that you say you blocked, which was Atlanta, Georgia, which I'd like to hear about, if you don't mind, when we get a chance. And then also, I know that Field McConnell is suing Boeing, if I understand it correctly. And we want to talk all about that regarding this interesting technology. And we're going to be talking about Flight 370, obviously. And you guys made some interesting statements in a recent broadcast, which is why I've contacted you. Let's see, one of you is a pilot. I'm not sure. For some reason, I didn't get all of the background information right up here. So why don't we just start off with you, David? And if you do see another request to add me as a contact, if you would do so, that will help, because I can put your picture up here. If not, then let's not worry about it.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. So my name is David Hawkins. I'm 70 years old, and I've had a career that involved mechanical engineering degree at Cambridge University. After leaving university, I joined a French oil field exploration company and traveled the world for 15 years and became familiar with some interesting things, including explosives and putting out oil fires on oil rigs around the world. And my last job with them was coordinator of artificial intelligence and geoscience research in the research center in Ridgefield, Connecticut. I started my own company in the UK, bringing artificial intelligence into the oil industry. And I arrived in British Columbia in Canada in 1992. And within, I would say, 3 weeks of arriving, I sensed I was in one of the most corrupt jurisdictions in the world, which will be staggering for a lot of Canadians that believe this country is innocent and full of peacekeepers. But it's not. And around 1995, I met some people in a company that I believe was building what in intelligence terms is called a backdoor into the command systems of Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And that company is called McConnell and David. Fast forward to 2000, for a variety of reasons, I contacted the head of security of the British Royal Navy, Andy Dupour, and I asked his people to take a look at McConnell and David because I sensed there was an organized group behind them that I thought represented a very strategic threat to the Canadian Royal Navy and the United States Navy. He called me back, he emailed me back, and he said, "Stop talking to me. We don't know who you are." And around...
Carry over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you both for very interesting introductions, I must say, and bringing up some things that I would like to drill down into further. I do want you to explain this technology that you're referring to in more detail, because it is not clear to me, I don't know if it's clear to the listeners, how this non-interruptible technology on the Boeing, on planes that is made by Boeing, would have either averted this incident or the other disappearances of these other planes that you're saying, if I understand you correctly, you're saying at least 4 or maybe even 5 other airliners have disappeared in a similar way, if I understood you. Now, if you can clarify that, I would hope you can, and talk about the technology, how it operates, why it would interfere with somebody's, either why it's responsible for the takedown, or why it would, if it was operational, it would stop a takedown. And I have read the background on this, but I have to be honest with you, it is not completely clear to me. That may be because I bring in other factors, and I want to bring those up as well. But if you could at least start off on that question. And David Hawkins, you're welcome to add whatever you think is helpful here.
Okay. Field, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. What I was going to do, and I'll make my response quite brief. We've been publishing this for 7.5 years, and I would say that anyone who really historically has had an interest would have already read the article that was printed on the 3rd of March of 2007. But the history on this Boeing uninterruptible autopilot is Boeing has had droned aircraft, as far as I know, and I don't know everything, going back to 1943. They've had droned swept-wing multi-jet engine airplanes going back to 1953, when Boeing had an MB, Mike Bravo, 47, MB-47, which was basically a drone. There were no human pilots in it. They enhanced that to a QB-47, and in our chat room, which is different than your chat room, I'm sure somebody will probably put up the YouTube of a QB-47 taking off in 1961. But Boeing, even though they didn't admit it readily, they have had dronable jet transport category aircraft for a long, long time. What finally caused them to honestly and responsibly admit they had this was when I filed a lawsuit, and that's civil case 3:07-CB Charlie Victor -24. That was my name, McConnell versus Alpha and Boeing. I filed that on the 27th of February of 2007. 4 days later, on the 3rd of March of 2007, in the London newspaper, Boeing published that they indeed had recently patented, they said recently, specifically they said last week, they said that they had published, or they had patented a week earlier, the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. Then they went on to dig a deeper hole for themselves by saying, and had that autopilot been deployed on 9/11, 9/11 would have been impossible. There's a little bit of a problem there because the autopilots were deployed in 1995. And 1995, according to my non-spectacular math degree, is 6 years before 2011. So what I'm telling you, Carrie, is this Boeing uninterruptible autopilot was in fact used on 9/11. It was used again on those 5 airliners. And I'm going to make this, and I'm not talking down to you or any of your listeners. I'm just trying to take a very complex system and make it crystal clear to a 10th grader in America in a public school with a C- average. I'm holding up in front of the camera a pepper shaker, but let's turn this pepper shaker into an airplane. The airplane is typically guided by 2 or 3 humans up in the cockpit, but as a backup to create